technical difficulty. 1 second. One.
You're good. Good morning, Paul.
Recording in progress. Are we good now?
Someone's speaker is on.
Kevin, is that you?
No,
Are you sure?
not anymore.
Okay, not anymore. All right, perfect. Called the meeting to order just about a minute ago, February 8th. Can everyone hear us on Zoom? We're having some technical difficulties to get in thumbs up. Thumbs up?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all for attending. I sure appreciate it. So we're gonna start with roll call. I'll go ahead and start and then we'll take it to the left. And then we'll hit the people online. So I'm Melanie Lewis, your chair of this board. I represent regulated electricity and from Pacific Corp.
Jamie Lemke, I'm the vice chair of the board. I represent natural gas distribution and I work for Northwest.
Scott Gallegos, One Call Concepts.
Josh Thomas, Executive Director of OUNC.
Morning, Executive Assistant and Outreach Coordinator from OUNC.
Good morning, Paul Schmidt, representing contractor. Hennessy, Oregon Public Utility Commission.
We're gonna work at Comcast representing cable TV.
Andy Crocker, Special Districts. Micah Brown, welcome.
Alpha Bobrin, working for Clackamas County, representing counties, and then also the treasurer for the board. Can we get our guests? Yes, Molly Peters.
My name is Chris Cubic, and I'm with Icon Construction.
Rocky Stewart, all-in-one, run the local lane CC.
Lane, UCC?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go through the folks that are joining with Zoom. We have Heidi as well.
Yes, Heidi Caswell from the OPUC.
Kimberly Boyd,
Hi, Kim Boyd with One Call Concepts.
Connor,
Morning, everyone. Connor Tony representing excavators.
Dale,
Morning, everybody. It's Dale Bromwich, TC Energy, representing interstate natural gas transmission.
right?
Frank Planton with One Call Concepts.
Kyle Thomas,
Kyle Thomas, representing OUCCs.
Lee,
Lee Tuminillo, representing cities with a population greater than 25,000, and I'm the secretary for the board.
Megan Moore, she was speaking, but we couldn't hear her. Sean Tarter,
Good morning. My name's Sean Tarter, City of Pendleton, representing cities under 25,000.
Scott Crosby,
Morning, Scott Crosby, representing telephone companies with less than 50,000 customers.
did we get everybody who's joining us via Zoom? Perfect. So if you are a visitor, go ahead and sign our visitor sheet. Wonderful. Do we have any testimony? No. Kyle, are you ready for our safety moment?
Yes, I am. Kitty, I'll go ahead and share my screen.
1 second. Okay, should be good to go.
All right.
Let's see if this brings up here. Okay. Thank you for attending my very first safety moment. Can everybody see the slide presentation?
No,
Okay, one moment.
you can see your beautiful face.
That's exciting. I'm on a different screen here, so I just got to swap here. 1 second. Let's see if I can pop this up here. Again, wrong screen. Okay. We'll just do this the easy way here. I apologize that it didn't come up, but we'll just do the slides a little bit differently here. Okay, so my safety moment is not going well, but I wanted to talk about something that the Forest Service does quite extensively in their trainings for fire response. It's called situational awareness. I took some information from the U.S. Fire Administration and some of the trainings that we do with our fire staff. Situational awareness is a concept that was developed back in the 60s. For those of you that don't know the history of the Forest Service, it started back early 1900s. There's a great book called The Big Burn that details one of the largest fires in the US history. But situational awareness is a mental state of alertness involving perceiving, processing, predicting the event to prevent an unexpected incident from happening. Remember that it's always better to err on the side of safety than to let a bad situation grow worse. So in this next slide, I have, go ahead.
I think you're good.
Okay. Hopefully this will pop up on the screen here. One second, let me see if I can get this to move up. Of course, because my slideshow is not presenting. Let me try this real quick. All right, much better here. Everybody hear this? See it?
It's you.
Oh, lovely. My apologies. It worked on my computer earlier, but I may have to have Kitty show this.
We're working on that.
Are you able to see that, Kyle?
Yes, I can. All right. If you go ahead and click that, hopefully you guys can, that video should pop up. Well, the perceptive, this is a video just for the sake of time. It talks about, it goes through and asks, how many times have you seen the burrito go out of the burrito truck? And then as part of this wonderful little video, it does also say, did you see the guy drop the backpack? Did you see the person in the orange shirt? And it's just a little test, which I'll drop into the chat. But it just talks about the concept of making sure that you're aware of the space around you. Josh, could you move to the next slide, please? Okay. If you click one more time. These are some questions that as applying situational awareness that we should really look at asking ourselves when we step onto a job site. So just a couple of them. Is there a threat big enough that you should stop? So if you go to the next slide, Josh. These are some, based off of those questions, these are some questions that I would pose to workers out on the site before you start digging. So that we can use the concept of situational awareness and bring it into the work that we do for underground digging. Do you see paint on the ground? Do they correspond to your dig ticket? Do you see positive response from non-present utilities? Something we talked about today in the budget meeting. Are there overhead utilities with drops coming down the poles? Are there meter boxes present? Water valves in the street, telecom boxes and power vaults? These are all the items that just when you walk on site, you would want to see before you start digging. Go ahead and click a couple more times, Josh. And here's a couple more questions. What are you missing? And given what we know for the site, is it safe to start digging? So the concept of situational awareness, taking in your surrounding environment, all the things that distract you, your cell phones, people walking down the street, are you present of mind going forward? One of the OSHA staff that I worked with back in Montana gave me the idea of safety being top of mind. And he talks about a power company that really rewarded risk. And so they had a lot of injuries related to that. And that concept of do anything to get the power back on to serve the customer so that we can be really responsive, created a culture of non-safe working environment, a non-safe working environment. Changing that and putting safety first, making sure that everything is where it needs to be before you start the work, and not taking that unnecessary risk is really part of what situational awareness is about, is making sure you understand the circumstances before you start the work that you're doing. Go ahead and advance slide. So to wrap this up, make the commitment today to build a situational awareness into your safety culture. I think that's really important in what we do as part of damage prevention, is making sure that everybody who is there has been trained in safe dig practices, but also knows how to apply that and what to look for before they start digging. Go ahead and advance. And that's it. So thank you. Sorry for the rough start. Back to you, Melanie.
Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate it. It's great not hearing from Paul. Just joking.
That's okay.
That's right. You don't have anything that happened last month? Okay. So, honestly, I was thinking when he was going through this situational awareness, not just with that, but in here, we don't ever stop and say, okay, if there was a fire in here, where would we go? Where would we meet? Where would we meet? So just in my head, I'm thinking, all right, well, we should probably start adding that to our agenda. Beginning of every meeting, we all know if there is some sort of drill that happens, like the emergency evacuation drill that's supposed to happen at 3 o'clock today, where would we go and where would we meet and who is taking count of who's there? So.
Is that not the building responsibility to be posted in the building?
I think as
And
we,
we have to just
if
remind
we are
everyone
meeting
that's
here-
where, that's the information you need to go.
they do have a safety, emergency safety guideline up there, but in general, us as an organization, a group, I think it would be best for us to have some sort of if something happens, this is what we're gonna do in all of our meetings. All right. So that was a note that could be an action item. All right, so next on the agenda, Kitty, can you pull up the meeting minutes? It's not showing. Your screen. Oh, sorry. It is, but. Okay. All right, if we can go through these, if we have any amendments, please let us know.
Well, I have one that just in adopting the previous month's minutes, I think it's October's minutes. I think it's separate. That was required.
Under the treasurer report. It said that I moved at the October treasurer report and then Nate moved to accept the October. Would that be October and November? Under committee reports, we're still showing budget audit and tariff committee. Can you remove tariff? So it says budget and audit.
Well, I didn't know that. No, that went to, that went, but
Yeah, tariff went to
it
budget.
just was taken away.
No, OER, okay.
What's that conversation? You're asking me to remember.
To accept the minutes as amended.
All second.
Any discussion? All approved, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, do the same. Hearing none, motion passes. Yeah. So we don't have any open testimony, right? What?
By request, we have put together some visuals that we can share here. This is really just a starting point for us, so open to some recommendations. Like this, something we're just gonna continue to work on putting them together a little more easily digestible presentation for this, so you don't just have to listen to me. Josh or Kitty will pull it up. Sure.
Sorry for the delay.
No problem. All right, so in January, we had 26,393 inbound locate tickets. Which is up 0.22% from January of 22 last year, which is pretty flat. Year to date, obviously the same because we've only had 1 month to cover, but in this graph, you'll just see the last few Januaries where we sit compared to that. So pretty flat last 3 years. Next. So outbound tickets, 142,967, which is down 2.72%. You can see definitely a 3-year trend on January is coming down. Went back even to 2019, it's even higher. Same thing year to date, obviously, but I just put that there as a placeholder. We'll update that. It'll be more exciting next month, your year to date. Have you guys ever heard the term YOY? Yeah. I mean, do you guys use that term? I don't, I've never heard it before, but somebody chastised me for not using it, so I can put YOY. I just have never heard the term. Also, it does. It's not yet. YTD. So. Our in and out ratio is 5.42 in January, which is down 0.16 from the previous January. So much like we talked about in budget audit, just and been talking about in board meetings for the last couple of years, it's going down. Next, high tech percentage, again, still strong at almost 72%, 18,972 of the total. Where high techs down 0.12% from January. Not notable now, pretty good. Again, our push here is again, I think our threshold is 75% of that next discount. And I can verify that, but this is where you see your biggest discount on the board is achieving these high tech ones. We're doing our part. We're being definitely on our agenda this year to be pretty aggressive with the iTech push. Our goal is to get you up over 80%. So anything y'all can do to help, it's great. Next one, Josh. So this is where we look at your blended ticket price. So right now your base price is $597. That's what you pay One Call Concepts for each ticket that comes in, and then you get discounts based on what types of tickets. So the biggest gap is if somebody goes through iTick and completes a ticket that doesn't need to be mapped or is direct release, that's approximately $1.50 savings. So it's pretty substantial if you can get that iTick. You know, we start using, and NXT is really just an example of a tool that can do that the most efficiently because it really puts all the control in the excavator's hand if they use the proper tools. So our goal is to continue to get this blended ticket price down, but as you can see, it's not a huge chasm even over the last several years. It's been pretty consistent right there. So, but that's what you're paying versus the $597 on average per ticket.
Wow, did you see in 2022 how low we were? Well, I was just wondering, is that some of our issue?
That's January 2022.
Okay, yes, oh, that's right. Just kidding.
And then ASA, just this is one of our KPIs. 60 seconds is our contractual obligation to you. As you can see, we do a good job staying well below that. And then this is just your county year-to-date, which is also provided in your board packet that we provide. But no surprise, your top 5 counties for incoming locates are Oklahoma, Washington, Bacchus, Lane, and Marion. That's what we got.
I like it from that.
The county.
No, just the formal visuals.
Oh,
Mhm.
you're welcome.
Any other suggestions?
I'm sorry. Last board meeting, I was unable to be here. Did you give an update on the market instructions versus the?
It should be, that was.
It is.
Okay,
It is. So.
okay. That's all going to go. Well, that's what was requested to be done. What are you?
Well, I think what we had on record was
an example of, you know, at least a break in there where there's a separation between marking instructions and driving direction, because right now it's just all jumbled together. Now we have a subject, I mean, it's got a, you know, a header. It can't be a header inside of a paragraph, but I mean, it's there. It does say it, but if you read over real quick, you barely even notice it. So I don't know if you've looked at it. We can look at it. We can take it up real quick and just take a quick look. Not all of them have it, obviously.
Yeah,
But
most of your circle tools are gonna be the ones where there's multiple points that you're gonna be able to see. I'd like to maybe get with you offline, and you can show me what your system's providing versus what our system's providing. Is there a difference? Have you looked?
no, no, it's how it's presented. I know you guys said that you had some issues on, you know, not issues, but your limitations to what you can do with it. You couldn't put a line break in, so you couldn't separate the paragraphs. But I thought we were going to at least put like enter, so it moves it down to where it's sitting right on top of each other. It's still the same paragraph, it's sitting right on top of each other. Instead of like in the mix of it as it's read all together. So I can do that, but I mean, I think I've mentioned this many times at the board, you know, if they want to take a look at it, it'd be good to take a look at it to show what I'm saying, because we did have an agreement on what we wanted it to look like. We'd have, you know, a motion to change it to that. Maybe we can go back and take a look at it.
That was our intent for sure. So if it didn't achieve that, then I have to go back to our system script to have them adjusted. I just want to make sure. I'm looking at the right thing, so. we have the right thing to show me an example.
You know, Scott, I was just thinking it would be nice to see, not only just like maybe a monthly on top, but a trending on the bottom or vice versa or something like that. So a trending, so from, let's just say the 5 years that we put on there, a trend line on where we're going.
Is that why a lie? I mean,
It would be nice to be able to compare
yep.
it
Okay.
year to date.
TV.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
Okay.
What all you got first?
Yep, good question.
Absolutely.
I get sometimes some questions on the field for members notified, particularly the column for status. I was wondering if it would be possible to rename that column to something more appropriate that it actually represents suggestion, positive response, instead of status, because status could mean a lot of different things, but what I'm gathering is that this column is specific for positive response. And I think it adds some clarity to that piece for as a tool for users to use as well.
In our rules, we have it as a response, not positive response, but I would agree. It'd be good to have that. clarified for those that don't know what they're doing.
It's just something that if you could look into to see if that's possible, Scott, and, that would be helpful.
Even so, positive response status.
I don't even know if we really need to specify status, positive response. Wire and, oh, and the other question I had too on that is that an auto-populated field with predetermined selections, or is there an opportunity to do variable language in that?
There are predetermined selections.
Okay.
So so they can't just put any status they want. So, and there are ones that this board approved.
Right. Are those defined in the user manual that I can look up to see what those are? I just want a better understanding of
What they are.
Yeah.
We can get those to you. I'm not sure if they're needed.
Okay. Thank you.
I think there are 5.
There's 5.
I think there are about 5.
I know we limited
We
it.
made, yeah,
Thank you.
and it just determined the status of the allocatable. I know we have, there's a few that we, as a board, decide not to have.
other states, they have way than different ones. Yeah, we decide just to be straight on the option that defines the ticket itself.
So I was just gonna have Alba pull up what you guys are talking about, so everyone can understand.
I'm sorry, you're sharing my screen too. I got the volume off now.
So can you just explain what you were stating?
Right, so the column for the section for members notified, which is all of the utilities that have been identified as far as being or needs to respond to locating and for locating market services. On the far right, there's a status column. And generally, I'm getting some questions from stakeholders, what does status mean? And ultimately, it's really the status of positive response. Positive response is an industry term. It'd be more appropriate if it was relabeled as positive response to indicate that's the actual function of that part. And then the other question I had was if those entries for that is there any variable language or is it all dropped in?
So for positive response, not everyone has to have a positive response, correct?
It's voluntary.
Yes. So, go ahead.
I would like to add though too, in looking at the rule, for that, it requires that the utility operator notify. And so what I'm suggesting to stakeholders when I'm talking about what this column is, to sign on board and get on board with this free service, you're essentially complying with the rule as notified, because you're providing a reasonable and legal means of communication through that form.
Mhm.
So it's a way to comply with the requirements of section 703.
So when was the last time we sent an email out to all of the utilities saying, hey, this is a free service under the section that you just mentioned? This would help excavators or whomever is digging. They can go and look at the status of this ticket. Have we done any sort of follow through with that?
I'm sure we rolled out communication when it first came into play. It's not something we do on a regular basis necessarily. So, it is a volunteer process still, so. Certainly communicate that somehow.
Yeah,
I think it would be helpful.
yeah, I'd volunteer to help draft something in format, whether it be an infographic or, something to get out there. Because there is some benefits to participating in this free service in order to comply with the response. So, and that should probably be highlighted in the messaging as well, because it just makes sense.
I know we did a small campaign, so, I think a good 6 months, so we can dig something up.
I'd be happy to work with whoever on this and we can get creative involved and get it e-shot out and on Facebook and on our website.
And so I'm thinking too, when it says status up there, so how about our people that are new here? Do you guys go into the tickets and do you look at the status? Right?
Pretty much for ours is basically what I'll do is that for the site, I put a ticket to make sure it's current and updated within the 45 days. So when we go out to the site, it's not called in. If it will go on here, double check to make sure it's within that time frame.
So do you ever look at the status?
Typically no. Mostly just the dates, making sure within the time frame and if it's called in or not.
So, they receive an email every time when they turn in with their located, whoever is calling in or locates, they will receive all this in email. So when they look at the status, I can understand confusion because at this point, we're not mandate to be positive response. So you can try they're still gonna be on there. We can try to talk to them. I definitely, so we have about 5 drops down from clear, no conflict, conflict, waiting. We decide which one they're not kind of looking through the ticket. Called, or there are a lot of them that we pull out, and I think we pushed 5 of them that were critical for that ticket, correct, Micah? And we keep that in, but if you look at those tickets, so if I'm new to this and I'm looking in this and I'm looking at the status, I will get, if I look at this, I will have 4 of them, they're not gonna say anything. Okay, they're not gonna say clear, no conflict, conflict, wait, they're not gonna say anything, but the ticket will be closed. If you click on search history, we're gonna include each utility that responds. So maybe if you click on search history, it will show you when the ticket come in, when it went to that utility, when that utility respond. It will give you all the details that you need.
Okay,
To click on search history and you'll see exactly all the steps when the ticket was submitted. It's literally by date, time, it's like seconds over there. So you can take a look when it did come and if it respond or not respond.
So why couldn't we just transfer that over to that main screen?
But that's showing that they were notified, right?
Yeah.
That's not showing that they were, that they actually marked that ticket. And I think that's where all the confusion comes from, is that status looks like it's when the ticket was marked, not have they sent a positive response.
Right.
So this overarching bucket of status is, I think, where the confusion is. It's the status of the ticket, it's the status of the positive response, but this is the status of when the operator was notified. I mean, there's.
And when they responded back, you can see MCI was notified at 1:30 on the 8th, and at 1:34 on the 8th, they cleared up all the time. So they probably have a system that automatically checks.
Yeah, this is the way that we usually check to see if this is an automatic response or this was the located response. Because if you look into when, let's say, I'll put my name, let's say when Comcast received the ticket at 12:43 and they replied back at 12:44. That's not possible. Okay. So he needs to have in time. And that's when you know that the system actually respond back to them automatically.
right. I like Frank's idea to the excavators too.
So if you go on the top of the ticket, we'll tell you when the ticket is due, when the ticket is ready to go. They'll get this. This is the status. It's pretty much to give the information to the excavators if they want to go there. And it says clear, no conflict. With Locating Inc., they do have a website. They can actually check their locates right there with pictures and everything. With Comcast, there is a website too, but it sends directly to the excavator. We don't post that public for people to go in and see what's going on, you know, on the website. But every excavator will get that, so they can get it, they can check their locates straight from their computer. They don't need to go out in the field to see if their locates on the ground. They'll get all the pictures and everything. Now, of course, you can see that there's 7 or 6 utilities that respond to this ticket. And I believe only 2 or 3 are positive response. So I think the effort is to look into positive response if we want to make this mandatory or not. And we can look at that. And that will clarify. I know that it's a free service to do that, but it might not be free for the utility. They will need to do that service. Because they will need to update the systems and do other stuff.
Right.
But if we could go into that, that will be the best way.
Oh, right, yeah, no, I think that's what we tried to accomplish before. You got shoved onto me and the OARs back when, Jared, he'd stepped down from being the chair and we kind of shared the torch on pushing that. And we just couldn't get there, with the smaller entities, municipalities and, you know, and other utilities that may not have the means to do that. I think now the technology might be, you know, there. So they might better
We can try.
be able to, but that's a discussion for an ad hoc committee or something else, but I agree with Kevin on the status part of it. It's been status for a while. I'd be interested in who's asking what that means when they've got no clear, no conflict right there, but to dovetail with and to go with our rules, the definition is response. It's not positive response, it's response, but that might clear it up, sure.
Well, and the other component of that too is being notified. So this, that was this is a form of legal communication, so we're looking at line rule and who's been notified. You know, that's another consideration as well. I also have another question if I may, as far as operational, is when a status has been updated for say MCI, and they indicate that clear, no conflict. Once that takes place, does an email get sent back to the excavator's email address that was attached or that was made part of the notification?
I think that's not for you asked, confirming or.
Yes,
I'm not,
Well, it's an operation question. I'd like
Yes,
to-
yeah,
so Frank might be able to answer that. if Scott can't, but I know like locating USIC, I mean, you've got entities that are sending those emails and sending those outside of doing the positive response. But I personally, I'm shaking my head yes, because that's something that we should be doing. I don't know if the public is doing it.
I know we do that in other states, I'll get confirmation if we're doing that for you.
Thank you.
Scott, I can just add, it's either, every state kind of sets it up different. It either goes out at the start date and time to let the excavator know what the status is at the start date and time, or it goes out when each utility makes a change. Most states choose for one email to go out and pick the time that it goes out. Otherwise, they would get emails each and every time something is changed.
Sir, Kim, is there an option to ask the excavator during the notification whether they want to receive status updates that built in the system?
It is not at this time for them to choose which way they would want to receive it. It's set up the same for everyone in the state.
In Oregon, the status is only displayed online, it's not even,
Not email,
not sent to the facility.
but it could be if the board decides. Okay, thank you.
And just one last thing. To go
Kevin.
into what Frank, go ahead.
Kevin, if, I guess I would say if a excavator wanted to check statuses all the time, this is available to them anytime. They can see what the real-time status is at any point they want to check it. So part of not sending out, or what most groups look at, is sending out so many emails that the excavator just tunes them out. Because
Yeah, I agree with you. I've seen that. I'm a victim of that as well. I got a couple of junk mail emails. But it would be interesting for, someone that is trying to plan out work, if the system allowed that option, yes, I do want to be notified. If that's something that could be built into the system, I think that would just be a customizable feature for however the excavator wants to run their business.
So over the years, I've noticed there's a lot of excavators, to go with what Frank's saying there. I think that's a good idea, but you'd be surprised how many excavators look straight and go first to that website first before they go to site. I mean, it's really kind of widespread and common knowledge now. They're using it. But
Right now.
I don't know anybody that does it.
Yeah, we primarily, it's always checking the website, making sure what's going on. And like I said, we do get so many emails that it'd be nice to get a verification, but our first response is always is the website to make sure what's been updated, what's not, and then we go off of that.
It'd be nicer to have other utilities responding, because you've got the 2 or 3 major ones on there, but it'd be nice. So it would be good for us to kind of maybe explore that now for a positive manner.
Yeah, push that.
Voluntary, yeah.
So put the 7 codes in Oregon in the chat.
Can you do me a favor, one last, if I may?
Right
I'm
on,
jealous
right
because
here.
I had a very good, I mentioned a very good topic and we were talking about status. And I'm not taking anything away from it, but we've had a long discussion. A good one. Can we scroll up to see the marking instructions real quick?
I was wondering if you were gonna bring that up.
do we know if this ticket, how this ticket was created?
May or may not, no.
Go there first, Mike.
Yeah.
How the ticket was created, is there a, if they use an ITech or do they?
That
Oh,
box down here. So this one does not have it.
So this is from search and status.
What I mean is they, it's there because the prompt is there for marking instructions. The location of work now, you have a header that says marking instructions. It says mark. And then it'll say driving directions mixed in with that whole paragraph. So you kind of can get confused in terms of, because the driving instructions somewhat look like the marking instructions. And so newer techs that are out there that are in the field, they're looking at that going, making phone calls, what am I doing? It's just a, mark over on E Street.
So I'm just wondering if the driving instructions are not going through search and status.
They may not be on every,
This,
they're not. So
this ticket doesn't have driving directions because it's an address ticket. And what does the map look like? Is it a parcel ticket or is it a route or? Yeah, not all tickets have driving directions. So that's why this one doesn't have the automated driving directions.
So you're gonna, yeah, so if we pulled up one with multiple circles, we'd be able to see the way it's laid out better.
Yeah.
And that's really what we discussed, that's all. And how to separate it, because let's say hypothetically that the last word right there, locate 9 feet west. Right after that, it would say marking or driving directions. Hyphen and then just give all of the driving directions to each and every one of them or whatever.
So
So
you just want to
return, get an enter in there so it separates it, because I know there were some limitations, or I thought there were some limitations with how that would be, how you could do that. And we said enter, that would be the easiest way is to get it.
Yeah, and Sharon. That was the way it was proposed to be.
So with our newbies here, is there anything that you struggle with that you would like to see?
I mean, I could come with some more. But right now, like I said, we basically making sure he's marking the areas, checking the website. We can just make it so open communication there. I mean, there's always going to be issues when you're on a site, just making sure mark correctly our lines as far as what's going out there, but it's always making sure as much information we can provide. There's always. I mean, major.
Okay, yeah. Where you point now?
So, definitely we can look into that status, because that status shows, so let's say if it's a new excavator, to look at the status, he will think that only 2 tickets are done.
Right,
If that says positive response, that might clear up, so, kudos to, that's great. But positive response, when we look into this one, was great as two things, to give a clear definition to the excavator, if it's, all those drop downs. And also, if everybody is positive response and you have all your conflicts resolved, the excavator can start digging. They don't have to wait until the end of the 2 days. And that was one of the reasons why you look at the positive response. If everybody goes on this ticket and then everybody respond in a timely manner, the excavator will be able to start digging before the 2 business days.
so I
When
would
all of
also,
them are done.
right, I would also like to see if, this ticket is complete. And let's just say PGE does not participate in the positive response. I would like to see in the status, something like does not participate in the positive response, something in regards to that. So people actually know that.
It does.
It does.
Yeah.
Well, it does.
Online it does, but
Oh, okay,
here is not a good example. Yeah.
okay. All
Yeah,
right.
it does. It does say do not participate. I'm not
Okay.
sure.
And then-
Like for ours, it will show here centrally does not participate.
Okay.
PG, mark response, Northwest Natural Mark response, there are no conflicts. So it'll tell us which ones
Perfect.
are not on the, we're actually on the website. That's why it's,
Okay.
we always make sure we go there.
Also?
and do something.
Megan.
I was just gonna say, can you guys hear me now, by the way?
Yes.
Okay. I was just gonna say, most of our tickets in our region, like Depot Bay to to North Bend, they all say do not participate. So we don't utilize this at all in our area. This is actually the first time I've ever seen a ticket with one. So it does indicate do not response. But that even, I've had that cause confusion down here from excavators that are used to this. They have called in to ask if does that mean we're clear? Because we didn't participate in the locate. So I think some clarification on all sides of the statuses might be helpful.
Thank you.
Just to reiterate what Megan said, every excavation safety training class I do, that comes up too, that does not participate. They ask, does that mean they don't have to mark? No, that just means they don't participate in positive response.
Okay. So that's a point of clarification.
All right. So Kevin made a suggestion to change that head or that status to positive response. Is that something you're asking us to do? Or is there a different phrase you want to use, or is that one more?
I would be okay with response. Because that's what's in our.
I would like to turn it into industry standard as positive response because it gives an action word to what the call is suggesting. So positive response, find into CGA best practices. As people become aware of what that, how they can interact with that, it would standardize it.
Right, but what you're asking, and I'm not arguing with Kevin at all, but what you're asking is something that's not in our rules. So if someone goes to reference our rules, because you're trying to sell this as, this is a way that we can provide response in terms of our rules. That's what you said earlier, correct? That's what you're telling them, that this is a bylaw.
It's what the rules say.
Right.
And considering how people are using it, but to add more clarity, it's a positive response. It's a call to action item, sir. Adding the word positive signifies that this is actually what this is called, is trying to accomplish and communicate.
Looking forward, so future state, if we do put it in the laws that we will require a positive response at some point, are we then going to consider their response to that as meeting that requirement? So if we have that column, say positive response, so moving forward, if you see where I'm going with that, if it is then in the law to require that.
Yeah, and so the term notify has been added to our definitions, and it's clearly states that legal means of communication. So in looking at this exchange, it would catch both aspects. If it fits into our laws and using common terms for industry standards as practices, I think it would just be better if it was possible.
I just don't want to create an issue that if there's an update to the dig law
Right.
requiring positive response, then we have to then modify this. If we don't see this as, appropriate method of positive response.
Positive response does not need to be notified, or at this time, doesn't need to be defined in rule because it's not conflicting with communication, notify, response.
And again, positive response is already required by law, as we understand it. It's going out, marking, notifying, do all the things, Kevin. So this is really just status, notifying the call center of your positive response status.
Right, which is not.
That's not
required. Jessica has her hand up to it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wonder if, when we get to the committee reports, and just advancing a little bit here, I did send a note out to all board members. If there's issues that the OAR's committee needs to undertake, I plan to have a discussion about adding those to our list today. Sounds like an item that would be appropriate to put on that list and not take the board's time up with kind of defining the problem, but rather refer it to the committee, however form that takes, to define the problem and bring back a solution so that the board's not spending time on this issue.
I like your idea. So.
I think the board's gotta, be in favor of moving that to committee. I think that's the process that we have, we change it. I'm not opposed.
Okay, is the board in favor? Moving it to committee?
I make a motion to remit this issue to the OAR committee for vetting and recommendation back to the board.
Can you, which issue, because we discussed a lot of that.
Yeah, whatever this issue is
Which one-
related to
which one-
positive
which one?
response correspondence. So determining what the right issue or addressing the need for communication through positive response in concert with our One Call Concepts contract. Scott, I'll send you a email with that motion language.
I second. Chat is fine if that's easier for you, I can.
No problem.
Do I hear any discussion?
You sure
You have to
say
stay.
yes on what we're doing.
Yeah, it's just a suggestion on changing it.
It was just a suggestion of changing from status to positive response.
I think there's more to it than.
There is.
Oh,
That's.
there's a lot of course, there's a lot more, and if we dig deep, there's a lot more to discuss all the time. So if you look at this one, because the positive response exists with each one of them, they do positive response based on, their ticket that they need to respond to, but what we're talking about is, do we need to make mandatory for them to respond back on that ticket? At this point, I believe there are only 3 companies they're doing that.
There's a lot more than that.
Are there more?
Yeah.
Oh, well, hold on, I take that back. Located meaning it does that with PG and,
I was looking at ticket data, there's a lot of people set up this.
well, then maybe, okay, let's move forward then. And take it to the vote and just do that.
Yeah, I think it's just gonna be a clear cut. I mean, we have.
Yeah.
Right.
It's.
And
it's
then
pretty quick.
you'll come to the board.
It was just a little bit confusing,
Okay.
what way to take, to what way to guess. No further discussion.
Just to clarify, this will include changing the status name, so we'll hold off on that until you're back on the board.
Yes,
As part of this project. Okay.
yes. Yep. Okay, and what were you saying about the motion?
He's second.
Try second.
Okay. Any more discussion? No, all approved? Please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, stay the same. Hearing none, motion passes. This gets taken to the OAR committee to discuss. And come to the board for recommendation. Anything else, Scott?
That was me.
Okay. Perfect. Treasurer's report. Good morning, everybody. Josh, are you ready with the report?
Yep.
Just actually real quick, just a point of clarification for the minutes. In the minutes, it states, and this is just a reoccurring statement that all board members have been emailed copies of the billing reports and for the current month. I'm now sending it to Josh and Kitty. Is it safe to assume that you are then per future minutes, you'll be sending them on. So all of this information will be presented to the board via email.
Correct, in the board.
This is an
packet.
accurate statement in the report, so.
Yeah, the idea is to limit the number of emails flooding in boxes. So just
Totally
solve
get
it.
I just want to make sure I don't have to.
Okay. Welcome to the treasurer's report. Okay, last month we approved October and November financials. And now we have finalized December and year-end 2022 results. Last month, we had some preliminary numbers for December, but it wasn't complete. Overall, you all have the link to it, so you may have already looked at it. We sent it out in the board packet, but I'd say the call outs are revenue overall, and especially for the month of December, was lower than expected. We've averaged all year long around high 100,000s, low 200,000s. We landed in the $130,000 range for December. And the service tariff rate increase and the back billing lacked the expected boost that we thought we'd see from that. Expenses were also higher in December, and I did reference this last month. We had 3 payroll periods in December, which affects our financials pretty dramatically when 3 land in 1 month instead of 2. We did at the end of the year, backloaded expenses on calendars. We had the wall calendars, the peel and stick calendars, and shipping. So those backloaded costs also increased our expenses. And then, as I mentioned previously, the meeting expenses in Salem were also higher than we averaged around $3,000 to $4,000 in meeting expenses per month, and December was $9,000. So significant. We had approved in last year's budget to get to a zero, to use up to $190,000 in reserves to balance out the budget while we were pursuing cost savings and the service tariff rate increase. We used approximately $160,000. That's down here at the bottom. 160. Actually, I think this was amended to 162,000. So minor change there. So while it was better than we had planned at the beginning of last year, it was worse than expected because I thought we'd have a lot more for our reserves to be able to keep our 3 months operating expenses in there. Right now, we are below that. I'm bringing a detailed analysis and recommendation to the board with a revised budget outlook. I won't get into that now during the treasurer's report, but more to come on that. You hopefully have all seen the issue summary that has a very deep dive on the analysis of what we expect to see in 2023. Overall, I've been working with Alba closely on getting systems in place for approvals, for invoices, for timesheets, mileage expenses, things like that, just getting things dialed in. I think it's going very smoothly, ensuring full transparency, accountability, and having a paper trail for everything with the proper coding. And so we can pull anything to be able to track any of the dollars we're spending. We're still working on the process and formal invitation for our accounting services and payroll. We're currently using the bookkeeping company, very aptly named, since they do our bookkeeping. But they have had some staffing issues over the last year, and it's affected our service. We also have not pursued a contract with them before my time. We're overdue for a competitive process. So we're also looking into whether or not the state would be an appropriate option for payroll. It might be cost prohibitive, it may not be a match for us, but that's one of the considerations. On a positive note, TBC the last month has really tightened up their turnaround time and are providing service and reports in a more timely fashion because they've fallen behind in October and November of last year. Speaking of TBC, just so you know, some of you know this already, they had a break-in in their office. If you attended the tour of the call center offices when Scott hosted us, their TBC's offices are not far away from them in Northeast Portland. They severed their electricity, they broke into their door, they stole some documents, but they didn't get into their computer system. There's no indication that any digital data or access codes were breached. There was no computer equipment tampered with at all. And all the lock cabinets remained locked and secured. So just so you all know, it happened. They're accountable and all of our data is intact. And then lastly, following on the recommendation of our financial audit from Aldrich that you've all seen, they have recommended that we get our raw data from QuickBooks so that if worst case scenario happens, they go out of business, their system gets obliterated, we don't have our financials, that we can port that. And we're getting that from them. We'll ask for that on a regular basis so that if we need to fall back on it. I think that's all for now, and I'll open it up for questions. Unless you have anything additional.
No questions? What do we need to improve?
The December end of year financials. Or the December financial report, treasury report.
I move that we accept December financial report.
I say.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. All approved, please say aye. All opposed? say
Aye.
All right, I'm optioning for a 5 to 10 minute break. Does anyone else need a break? Okay, cool. 10 minutes, will that be good for everyone? All right, 10-minute break, be back here at 10:16. You know. Okay, our power board is not. Welcome back, everyone. We had to move around here. It's a little chilly. So we had to get up and move a little bit. So continuing on, we're on the officers' reports. Honestly, I really don't have much. Actually, I really don't have anything because I think Josh is probably going to say what I was going to say. Josh and I met, he had his performance review, and in that review, as I was speaking with all of our board members, there was one thing that came up consistently with a lot of the board members, and that was a packet. So we're gonna smooth that process, fine tune it a little bit more, but essentially what's gonna happen is you're gonna get a board packet, and that packet is gonna be sent out Friday-ish. So you have at least 2 days before the meeting to go through the documents. All of those documents are what we're gonna be talking about. And that includes all of our committee reports as well. So I would like you to be prepared for the meeting and discussing any sort of issues or anything that you have. He's also going to put together an action item summary, or just a summary of the meeting, 48 hours to 72 hours after the meeting. So you're not going to be seeing you're not going to be seeing the notes from Scott anymore. That's going to come together in the packet, but you will be seeing the action items or the summary of this meeting 48 hours to 72 hours afterwards. So if there are action items in there, you will know right away, or you will be reminded right away what you have to do before the next meeting, okay? Any questions there? I bet you're gonna go into it more, right?
I think you covered it.
Okay.
There's not much more to cover.
Okay, perfect. That's all for me, because I know Jamie has some things to talk about.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I'll just reiterate that I appreciate the packet. I'm sure a lot of board members do, and it's, yeah, definitely a benefit to have it all just in that one document. So I'll take my time to go over a white paper that was released by the American Gas Association. So the AGA, one of the points. So the document that you can see on the screen right now is the full report, which is actually part of the packet that was sent out. So it's about a 30-page report, pretty lengthy. I went ahead and put together a presentation to summarize the report, but of course, if you read the whole thing, you're going to get more in-depth information about the different elements that they assessed. So while Kitty's pulling up that presentation, basically I'll give you an understanding of what the paper is about. So like I said, it was released by the American Gas Association. So yes, it was a organization that brings in gas utility companies as its members. So it sounds very specific to the gas industry because of that, but this is kind of, it assesses states' core components of their DID laws to identify kind of the most effective ones in preventing damages. So even though it's the Gas Association that put this report together, it's definitely very applicable to any underground operator. So if you go ahead and go to the next slide, pulled a quote from it. So the ideal approach in avoiding excavation damages is for operators to work with stakeholders, to promote 811, work diligently to provide high quality locates to excavation notices, and pursue improvements that address the root causes of damages. So it really speaks to that shared responsibility, and then also an approach where you're looking at data to identify areas to prevent damages. Go to the next slide. The next couple bullets are kind of like a high level summary of what the report covers. And again, you all have the report available in the packet. You don't necessarily have to follow along right now, but you can feel free to read it at your leisure. Kind of re-solidify the information I'm going to present to you right here. So explains how multiple factors can impact the frequency of damage. They do highlight that the level of state authority enforcement can be one of the key components. They mention how each of the 50 states has their own unique dig laws that can vary. They've seen, the report mentions that it's seen drastic improvements in the past 20 to 25 years, but there's still areas that can be honed in on to further improve our damage prevention capabilities. So in 2015, the pipeline and hazardous material.
I have to cut you off for just 1 second.
Sure.
They cannot see your screen. Oh, it didn't share. Sorry, guys, give me a sec. It shared, but it's blinking to the report and then a black screen, and right now all we see is the black screen. Oh, weird. Weird. This is what we're seeing. Yeah. Okay. There we go. I wonder if you just can't put it in the presentation mode. But everybody seems to.
You can see it now, though.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just do it this
I'll
way.
try to
Yeah.
move that way.
So in 2015, PHMSA put together their rule for evaluating the excavation damage prevention programs for the states. And they evaluate adequate or inadequate. Our state's been adequate. They, the report that AJ put together analyzed the leading states based off of their excavation damages per 1,000 one-call tickets. So basically, if you have a low damage rate per 1,000 one-call tickets, you are identified as a leading state. And we'll get into a slide that shows that. And then they identified the core components that can be seen amongst those leading states and that represent an effective dig law. Go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, there were multiple states identified to be evaluated, what their dig laws stated and what were seen to be the most effective within those states. They reviewed the damage rates during the period of 2017 to 21, and it was any state that had less than 2 damages per 1,000 one-call tickets, and that was based on the information reported to PHMSA. And that'd be the gas distribution information reported to PHMSA. And they identified 12 core components within these states that led to the most effective damage prevention programs. So the following slides are going to have those 12 core components in a really brief summary. This slide shows those states, the breakdown of what their damage rates were, how low they were. You can see Arizona at the top and so on from there. So they all have fairly low damage rates. Just for full transparency, Northwest Natural's damage rate per 1,000 tickets in 2021 was 2.46 damages. So, you know, Oregon itself is above 2 in the damage rates as far as a gas company or gas operator.
Damages for every 1,000 tickets.
Yeah. So these are less than 2 damages for every 1,000 tickets, which is an industry standard metric to kind of calculate where you're at as far as your damage rates. And if you go to the next slide, we can jump into the core components. So I know I'm just talking. So if there's any moment where discussion is needed or anything that jumps out, feel free to chime in and stop me. But some of these components Oregon already has in place. Some of them will stand out as topics that we've discussed today. Positive response being one of them. So basically, these next 12 items are identified as elements that contribute to an effective damage prevention program within the state. And most of these items are things that can be impacted by DIDWA updates. So having a maximum size or scope of your one call ticket, which I know has been a topic of discussion before, basically have a reasonable size to balance the workload with the resources needed to fulfill those ticket requests. Have the 811 ticket reflect excavations that will be completed and match the parameters on the ticket. Have clear boundaries and repercussions for misuse or abuse. And there's some example language there. Like in Arizona, they say limit to the request an area that could be reasonably excavated. Sorry for the typo there. In Kentucky, excavation demolition site location shall not exceed 2,000 feet and so on. And if you're reviewing the report, there's multiple other references to the states that were identified as leading states, their language. So if any of these items become more topic for discussion for us to assess, the report can be utilized to look at what the information is listed in those other states. So if you jump to the next one, the next core component would be the longevity of the ticket. So how long is the ticket good for? So they suggest that it's no less than 14 days and no longer than 28 days. Ours is 45. I listed out the ones that are 20 to 21 days and the states that are 28 days. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just presenting the information that's in the report. So I think that our 45-day ticket length, I think it does fall outside of the parameters that they're suggesting. But they also, of course, don't suggest to have it too short because then you'd have an influx of refresh ticket. Go to the next one. Having a clear tolerance zone definition, which we have. Clearly establish the dimensions of your tolerance zone, and they suggest 24 inches. The fourth component is what can be used within that tolerance zone and clearly define those tools. Hand excavation, air cutting, back X, things of that nature. Go ahead to the next one. So the fifth core component is how you define or how emergency is defined for applicability to an excavation. So no exemption for operators working on an urgent repair, which is, I guess, something that some states have as an exemption. If an operator is going to go work on a facility, they don't have to request a locate. We don't have that exemption. So number 6 is clearly defining the responsibilities for the excavator and having the definitions below and clear definitions of who an excavator is, what they need to do to protect the facility, and so on. So as I mentioned, a lot of these things we do have in our DIDWAs. Some of them will stand out as items that we've already mentioned is potentially needing further assessment in our DIDWAs. So exemptions for excavations and not including exemptions for ground rods or guy wires. Oregon was called out in the paper as being recognized as having limiting the availability for exemptions. I think that there's still maybe some exemptions we could look at in the future, removal of hardscape roadwork, things like that. White lining, also another core component is to specify the responsibility of the excavator to delineate the work boundaries. And they do call out that they see lower damage rates in states that require electronic or physical white lining. And also they give consideration for areas that may be impractical to white line physically. I'm going to go to the next slide. So number 9, as I mentioned, A lot of these will feel familiar. Positive response require utilities to respond and the excavator to check for that response, have it in the rules if that's a requirement. 10 is to require all newly underground facilities to be able to be located with commercially available piece of located equipment. So this really speaks to sewer and water pipes. And ensuring that all newly installed facilities are locatable. Marking of sewer lines clearly define who is responsible for that, and it does call out that it's unreasonable to expect a homeowner to locate their own sewer lateral. Your homeowners aren't part of the one call notification system. They aren't going to know when excavation is happening in the area, and that can be very concerning for, you know, the installation of trenchless infrastructure could go through sewer lines and things like that if they're not marked. And then the last component, number 12, is the enforcement entity within the state. So that the two bullets on the left there call out that you can have an advisory board or damage prevention council that holds the authority to exert enforcement over non-compliant parties when damage occurs, or the state's pipeline safety enforcement agency also function as the overall damage prevention authority. And then on the right, you can see the items that the enforcement should have the ability to impose penalties, have more consequential impacts if there were fatalities or injuries, demonstrate a balanced approach, show that it influences behavior, have the ability to shut down any excavation site where they don't have a proper locate ticket, the ability to revoke licenses, require training, have transparency in that enforcement, and also have timely investigation and imposing those enforcement. And as mentioned earlier, this is one of the components that they would call out as being one of the effective elements of damage prevention program in the state. And then last slide is the paper concludes with how to advance the bill through legislation and things to consider. So this would be if we needed to go through legislative action to make updates requiring or any updates that were required to make a dig law change. I know that we aren't under that level of control for some of the dig law updates that we could do. It's like I said, different state by state, and I think we have a little more bandwidth to make those decisions with amongst the board, and some of that would not have to go through legislation, but this is just high level if legislative action was required. So that's the presentation and the summary of that paper and very high level. Just to reiterate, they assessed all those states that they felt were leading in damage prevention efforts and what the components were in their dig laws that help them be so effective at reducing damages within their state.
Thank you, Jamie. I think some of these actually we can take them to the OAR committee.
Yes, yeah, I think that it does highlight some conversations that we have had, and I know that Jessica shared that spreadsheet with the different elements or items that OAR has discussed in the past, and some of them are even within that white paper. So it could be potential for more discussion regarding some of those components in our OAR meetings. It's always nice to have the industry provide feedback like that, because there was, I mean, that's months, if not a year of time of executive committee members assessing all those different elements that each state has, and there's 50 states and 50 different rules. So that's a big undertaking to review all those and come up with some very pointed elements.
I think with the OERs, like you mentioned, I think there's a direction to have some changes. So I think that really can help drive that. So thank you for that. Very much.
Do you have any other discussion with them?
Just, Frank said, will we be sending out the AGA white paper, and that was in the board packet. For those who aren't board members, we'd be glad that we can send out the white paper and the slides to share those. So we can get those to you, Frank.
Yeah, it's, when that report came out, it was clear that it was very, you know, it correlated pretty directly with the work that this board does. You know, it speaks to, you know, all the considerations we make here.
Thank you. Is that it?
That's it.
Oh, of course.
Well, keep mine brief. I don't have anything to add right here, but we'll be adding more when we do the committee report. Evan?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, excuse me, Lee's next.
See,
Yeah. You're not.
they didn't read it.
You have- She's still on.
Yes.
Is she speaking? It's muted if she is.
Lee, I'm not hearing anything from you, so I'm gonna move to Kevin. Okay.
Go for it.
Thank you, Melanie.
She sent a text. Can somebody repeat what you said?
Lee, I'm asking you if you have anything to report. All right, Kevin, go ahead.
Thank you, Melanie. So Melanie asked me to provide a little bit of insight on the complaint process information that we've updated, and you guys has been updating you guys all along when we've been updating our system to collect more investigation information and being able to report out to you guys. A dovetail into that system is the actual complaint process form that we use. Way back when we took this project on, we conferred with Consumer Services Department and formulated a form that they need, the information that they need for a case file. And we worked collectively to figure out the appropriate questions that we need in order to do investigation related to check and manufacturer rules and other safety rules that may apply. So we've had a complaint form, put it online, and we've updated it just recently. And so Melanie asked me to go through those updates, kind of like release notes, if that's okay. So the first one is being that we provided greater detail.
Do you have an example that we can look at?
Example of the form.
Yeah.
When you sent the link, I did try to go through the form, but you get stopped because if you aren't entering any information, it gives you the.
Right, I didn't want to fill out.
I didn't want to fill out the form, which is
Go on.
random,
I'll do it.
which is the periods and 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah,
I made that same observation myself.
you could, as I've asked my members of my staff to test. So they filled out a bunch of stuff. It's test, and we went through it.
Do that now.
But no, I can show the form too, if allowed, so.
Whichever makes the most sense. It's just easier when there's
Katie,
something
can I share
involved.
screen, please? Katie?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have to go. Okay, I think I can do this from the form and off my notes, but. So the first thing that we did, and this represents what it may look like on a screen. If it's doing it online or on your desktop, it'll appear differently and might function a little bit differently, but this is the gist of it. This is as big as I can make it. So I'm sorry for that. So we added more detail on what the complaint process is about. We highlighted some features about relevant survey topics are arranged with collapsed menus, so people can open and close the particular sections of the complaint that they need to work in. We also highlighted the point that supporting information is very important to make during a complaint. A lot of times we get pictures, but they're not adequate from the standpoint of being able to make a conclusion of fact about a certain aspect of the complaint. So we did highlight and provided some hyperlinks in there. And as always, our consumer services contact information is available at the bottom of the complaint. If the complainant would like to fill this out or have assistance filling it out with a consumer services representative, that's always an option. Change the format a little bit, so we're working through pages as opposed to scrolling down to certain menus. So there are 5 pages that have been established to kind of better organize the information. So it's your contact information, who your complaint is against. One of the things that we ran into on the old form is that we had a pre-format data entry on additional stakeholders that they wanted to complain against. And that kind of got meshed up with the report that was supposed to be representing that information. So in this instance, if there are additional stakeholders that you'd like to complain against, you could just go and use the add button to add another stakeholder to your complaint. And we'll keep track of that accordingly. So gosh forbid, we have 2 contractors, at the same site, didn't use a duplicate ticket or whatnot. We can kind of try to sort this out, and hopefully we will get some information that will kind of sort out the parties to be investigated. This hasn't changed much. It's just basically a location and address field. So by clicking on that, I don't know what it'll do. Actually try to, if it'll populate the map or not, but yeah, here we go. So it's centralized on Oregon in this view, but you're also, the complainant may also add a location, up there, and it'll search for a specific address. You could also use a drop pen and zoom in as much as you'd like. You can also change the layers of what the imagery is on the application. So we're using aerial maps to have that as available to you. And then the last page really highlights the major changes that we've made, updates to the complaint form. One is to collect and identify the root cause or / issue for complaint. And we put these in buckets that talk about. Dale, you have a question?
I just had a question on one of the past pages on the complaint against part of it. Is the information off the one call ticket sufficient? I got that question from a couple of my technicians. Because what happens is somebody's doing that locate that's not even been on site, like an associate, or somebody's just taking care of the one call for that contractor. And they're not even close to being on site. So is that information off the one call, is that sufficient?
So I think I understand your question. If you're looking at the person that provided the notification,
Mhm.
yes, that should be sufficient.
Okay.
There isn't a direct drop to, merge that information from a roll call ticket, so it does have to be manually entered. And of course, what we're also asking for too, though, is, does the company or individual have a licensing number? And if you do select yes, you will be presented, the different license types that, could apply, but this really does help us narrow down and, who the stakeholder that we're need to be inquiring about. And also, if, the stakeholder does have a license number, if you could provide that license number, there's a space there as well to provide that information too. So it's not just the information that we value on the roll call ticket, additional information that'd be helpful as well. And so just like to note that.
Okay. Another comment, I guess, is I recently used it. I think we had some conversations here in the past couple months and stuff, and it worked very well once we get the little bit of kinks out right off the bat. But I especially thought the mapping part of it worked very well.
Yeah, that the mapping question is specific to, please indicate the location where the event occurred with the pin. So it's not your home office address. It's not, you can really narrow down and drop that pin, and it saves having to add an address to it with all those fields. So you can search by address, but ultimately you're dropping a pin and checking the button, and that'll put us on the universe for where we should be looking. Thank you for that feedback. So back to the root issues, we overhauled the things to really align with the root categories that CGA provides. And we discussed this a little bit, kind of dovetailed to what we're going to be reporting out to you guys for enforcement. So the way the survey works is, if there's a no locate request as part of the concern, you will be asked a series of questions. Some are required, some are not. To the point of that root issue. So in this case, for no locate request, we're asking, to better understand more about no locate requests. Was there an apparent reason why? And CGA recommended starting to collect that information so we can do better outreach, better understanding as to why. So we're trying to collect that information as we go through it. For a section on facility information, we asked the type of facility, the width, and then just a general description of what the project is entailing, and excavation practices, damage prevention practices were inadequate.
Kevin, up above where it says no locate request, are you able to select more than one option there?
Yes, sorry. So at the very top there, if your complaint involves more than one root issue, you can also use that checkbox item right down here and add another issue to the complaint. Mindful though, it's only allows you to do one location. So we had to narrow it down by location. So if someone says, no locate request and fail to hand expose, we'll investigate it, but it's an all encompassing way to collect it on a company. Yeah,
That's the way to go. One location. You cannot do multiple complaints and multiple cases. It's one by four.
Joel?
Hey, Kevin. So then, like for those of us in smaller communities, could we just use like one location? Could we just say like the town then? Is that going to be acceptable?
Well, when we're asking for where the event occurred. We would like you to get as specific as possible.
Okay, but like when people are, are building a complaint, you know, typically you're gonna want to have more than one example. I mean, you're not gonna file a complaint off of one incident. So you're going to build a case and you're gonna have, you know, a variety of incidents before you decide to file a complaint. So there's gonna be, you know, several locations where you have a problem.
Or how the statutes is written is that each location could be considered a separate violation. So the point is that you can have multiple complaints, but it needs to be by a location.
It needs to be for each locate, then you're saying.
Each location where you want us to investigate, yes. Because each of them will have a different timeline, a scope of work, a type of work. All of those things need to be accounted for separately when we're evaluating an alleged violation.
Okay.
So maybe it would be to your advantage to not wait until 4 or 5 build up. You know, get the message out early. The other areas that we focused on was verification of excavation activities. We need to verify what activities took place, you know, at the event, if. So we're not going to ask these questions if it's a complaint regarding locating practices. So you won't be presented this information if you're, filing a complaint for located issues. But we do need to verify and characterize what types of activities are taking place during the event. And by selecting yes, then you have a series of questions that are some are required and some are for just general information. One of the things that we highlighted is, do you have a photo of the general overall area? We need some landmarks to reference when we're looking at a complaint. And so we expanded the photo section to include 4 photos here. We also have an opportunity to attach file names, not the file itself, but file names. So if you have a map, drawing, a series of emails, we're asking you to combine all that and attach it to the form, and consumer services will reach out and collect that form from the case file. Some of these questions haven't changed. In the area of excavation, are there any above ground markers, facilities? It's really important to have that piece as far as considering whether a rule is violated or not, because the way our exemptions work. And so we like to collect that information as well. What else? So that's just a general overview, but and I did answer some of your questions. Is there anything else that you'd like to know about the changes? And if you do want to play around with it, just hit, your first name is Test and last name Tesla. Yeah, joke.
This is great. Is this in the final stage? Do you do any more changes in this program, or is it kind of set in stone?
So this is like our 4th generation of this. And so we're open to changes, and really considering, our complaint team and what they need and what we need. We just try to be very concise with, instead of one paper form that asks you every single question that might not apply, we're only asking and channeling to the root issue that is of that concern. For the complaint. And then if there's multiple issues, you know. I'm kind of, I mean, I did put a limit on it, so I did get a complaint the other day that like 60 violations with one complaint. And we had to have a meeting to bring some understanding as to what the scope of the investigation should be, and so we pointed them to this form, and I'm curious as to see what they're gonna come back with, but yeah.
And on that note, I understand from the beginning, you, the person that's trying to make this complaint, you're gonna have an option to call in to get help. To help you complete this form, because what I know, a lot of my excavators, they tried to do the whole form and then didn't go nowhere or didn't know to upload photos, or in the process, they kind of lost the complaint.
Yeah.
In a way or another. So do you think it's gonna be easy for us to have like a PDF with drop downs on each page? Because it doesn't look like too many pages, like 5 pages. Like a PDF training that shows each drop down, what means, what they need to put in, or somebody who's new to this and he wants to make a complaint, instead of calling you guys, if we have this little kind of, not a training, but a drop down, this question, it's about this, and this is what you need to put in into that, so they don't get confusion.
Yeah, you know, in trying to minimize, the confusion and if you haven't taken a look at it, we really did try to make the questions in the field self-explanatory, like, not get into a situation of looking at a column trying to figure out what something means.
Right.
So, we're using, for excavation practices, we're not providing variable language as to what that is. We adopted what CGA has for their root issues, their root causes. If you're doing a damage investigation, it's pretty much the same language, except we're not calling it root causes because that's associated with the damage. Root issues is more, you can have a violation and not damage it. So we're kind of changing it to what is the scope of the investigation that you want, that would be appropriate. And so.
But Kevin.
I'm sorry.
But Kevin, sorry, this is Heidi. Wouldn't it be something that we could look into developing, just some explanation of the fields to guide somebody through it?
Sure, and it's a good suggestion, and we can also put more emphasis on the first page on what those root issues are and links to it. So there's an opportunity to add more information on this first page. Sure.
Yeah, I think, kind of echo, but it's just if somebody's gonna ask me at least, or at least they know what to expect, there's like 5 pages and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
pretty much a brief description, this is what you need when you want to turn in. You will need, to go this, do that, and I don't want to put, I just want a short description what that field, not to put words there or anything, we don't suggest anything, but just, figure out, because it looks like they're self-explanatory 5 pages, and if we can have this PDF thing, I'm thinking that.
Yeah,
maybe
the problem
we
with
go faster.
the problem with the old form and some of the feedback that we took was it's small. And that was just, okay, I still need the same amount of information. We just spread it in pages and put it in groups, class in groups. So as someone gets familiar with it, it should present itself as self-explanatory. And again, we're using industry terms that are relevant to our industry.
Yeah. I think it was beneficial. I think it was self-explanatory when, we rolled out the new technology, but we still went through the process of that education and I think it really helped. So I think it's a good suggestion. I also appreciate the transparency of the changes to the complaint law. I know the history of it, I was part of the history of it. The decisions made to move it to a one-stop shop and getting that link on our website. So any change in the future, the transparency is always something that we'll appreciate very forward. So thank you, Kevin.
Dale?
Yeah, Kevin, I was just curious on, after the completion of the complaint, kind of the flow of notification afterwards to the person complaining. How does that flow take place?
So on our opening page, we kind of give a briefing on what that flow is. And, you know, once you complete the form, the survey form, OPUC staff will contact you or the company's designated contact. We had an instance where someone filed a complaint, but directed the follow-up to someone else. And so, you know, that's depending on how organizations are wired, we accommodate that as well. But what we'll do is, you know, with that email address that you do provide, consumer services will reach out and ask if there's any questions that you give you a copy of what you submitted. And we ask you to confirm that information. And then also, if there's an opportunity to provide additional information that you couldn't add, you can do that. If staff from the pre-screening of these has any questions, we'll make that part of the case record. And consumer services will take those questions to the person that filed the complaint. And hopefully we get some response and answer to that in order to clear up any issues that we have with determining the root issue or the scope of the investigation. Once we get that confirmation for you or from you, then give the go ahead for staff to investigate. And away we go.
All right, thanks.
So Frank also suggested in the chat, if this is something that Creative could help you with, put a training video together to go on the website.
Well, so we hire a voiceover and I don't have to talk. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, if that's something that we'd like to see, we can talk about the scope of what that is, but maybe, you know, an infographic. I noticed on CGA's website for best practices that they took all our best practices and turned them into individual infographics. Wow.
What's an infographic?
It's information with graphics and pictures and kind of like, you can do like a flow chart with them. And,
YTD?
yeah. So depending on like how detailed it is. Yeah, we can do that, right?
And then I'm happy to work with you again, like, write up everything that I input into Write that goes to.
Okay. So we have 2 items now.
Action items.
Okay.
So this is not specific to the complaint form, so apologies if it's outside that scope, but it is about complaints in general. So do you have a process internally where you require a follow-up to the complaint filer and or who the complaint was filed against on the completion of that complaint, where they will always receive some sort of notification of the investigation's been complete? Just basically what the resolution was.
We've outlined that from the get-go with consumer services. It is a communication that is supposed to occur from staff doing the investigation to consumer services, and the understanding is that they are going to update the complaint with the updated information. some instances, the staff will make a OSHA referral, which you guys are all familiar with. And we'll update consumer services that we referred this to Oregon OSHA, here's our report and so forth. Once that goes out, OSHA has the ability to report back, but they're not. We have an understanding that they'll keep us updated, but those investigations could be up to 130 days or so. So that's not the standards, not the average. I don't know what Brian's staff at Oregon OSHA, what their turnaround is. It really depends on the complexity, the number of resources that they have that you can assign to inspections and complaints and referrals. So there's a lot of moving parts towards that. But if we do a dismissal, we let consumers know, and I will put a note to check to see if that is a well-oiled machine, because that was what we wanted from the very beginning. And consumer services had some leadership change, and so it's more direction on policy and stuff. So we're putting this together best we can.
Yeah, that gets to my point, or
Okay.
question of, right, what the follow-up is at the closure of the investigation. So, I'm assuming it would be acceptable for whoever filed a complaint to reach out to consumer services if it's been multiple months to check the status or
And
see if there is a closure, dismissal, or something like that.
And the other thing too that we built into our reporting, getting information to the board, is that once we close out that inspection and we have a finding, whatever action that was taking place, that will get generated into the report that we distribute, present to the board. The frequency of that hasn't been nailed down yet. I was hoping once a year, but it sounds like it might be more appropriate for quarterly. And at least you'll know, okay, this case is out there and it's open, so. We got to use technology to our advantage. You just don't have the people that we're utilizing resources differently than instead of, writing out a list every month of what's open, that is, we have to use the technology to report back to us what's going on.
Understand.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Kevin.
I'm gonna stop here.
All right. Josh and Kitty.
Real quick, is anyone else calling? Okay, I just sent an email to the gal saying it eventually.
Just a little. We're just like right there. Okay.
So can remote participants see the slide? This time, since I'm in a presentation mode, okay.
Yes.
So, good. Thanks for the opportunity to give updates since we met in Wilsonville last month, just down the road from here. Covered a lot of miles, and the theme of the month has been safety events. One of the first one that I'll cover, Paul and I had talked, and I think Connor as well, about what companion training programs are out there that we could cross promote with that cover things like trench safety that are out of our lane. So I sat in on this NUCA excavation safety competent person class. And it seems like a good fit. It's taught by Greg Henneveld, who's been teaching this class for 10+ years, Sun State Equipment Company is where he's from. And the emphasis on the training, as I mentioned, is trench safety, but the cool part of it is they use these animations. And while it's a very serious topic and serious scenarios that he's covering, it's kind of has almost a humorous angle to it, and it really kept the audience engaged with these little cartoonish depictions of what can go wrong out in the field and why it's so important that they pay attention. So people weren't tuning out. And so it was valuable to sit in on that. We exchanged cards and information, and so I think in the future we can help each other's programs.
Are those like infographics?
They are like infographics, similar, but more animation. But the same concept, taking a difficult or complex concept and making it more easily digestible. Road Basin UCC Safety Fair was down in Central Point, about 50 attendees. Jeff Seamus was calling it the first annual event because he intends to do multiple annual events in the future. Well-attended, good engagement. Our own Kevin Hennessy was there as a presenter. I gave some welcoming remarks. We also had Brian Logston from One Call Concepts presented on ITIC NXT. Alan Daniels presented on the UCCs and Oregon dig laws. Brian Snap from OSHA talked about enforcement regulations. And then afterwards, Kevin and I met with Jason Kennedy from ELM locating down there, and Casey O'Rourke from A-Vista. So it was a good opportunity just to show presence. And I think their model could also be used for other UCCs too, this safety fair concept. They had the giveaways, they had a lunch from Chipotle, so very simple as far as logistics go. They got the room donated, so it's free. But just bringing those contractors in, and it's an opportunity to have their questions answered and to network. Mid-Oregon Construction Safety Summit, Kitty and I just traveled to Bend for that. It was a 2-day training conference about safety and health of workers in residential, commercial, and industrial construction. Kitty staffed our booth in the convention hall, and I presented on what you don't see can hurt you. And so it was just it was similar to our excavation safety training, with the intro similar to the presentation I gave when I was applying for this position. So just the threats and dangers around us every day, and how important it is as excavators or professional excavators or contractors out there in the field, what can really come back to bite them. We also met with Kyle, so thanks Kyle, if you're still on the call, for taking time to meet with me at lunch and also at dinner with Don Moore. We reconnected with him and talked about their efforts to reinvigorate the UCC there in their community, some of the issues that they're seeing. It was a really good conversation also about just updates on what OUNC is up to in our strategic plan. Katie and I traveled out to Estacada to meet with Scott Crosby, where we had the publicity committee meeting. Scott will also be the feature of our first member profile. I'd like to do member profiles on each one of you to kind of get to know your fellow board members. We learned a lot about him when we were out there touring his facilities and his family business. Very impressive operation. And so it's a good opportunity for us, since we're all working closely together, to get to know each other. And then lastly, GOSH conference is coming up in Portland next month. Unfortunately, it's the same day as the OUCC meeting and our dinner event. I should be able to make it there in plenty of time for the dinner event. I will most likely miss most of the UCC meeting, but I'll come straight from there. It's Portland Convention Center. It's the governor's occupational safety and health conference. Thanks to Connor for connecting us up with that. It's a great opportunity. And a lot of the people who were involved in organizing the Mid-Oregon Construction Safety Summit are the same people that are organizing the governor's safety summit. A lot of my time has been spent on budget analysis, and I'll present on that in a bit, so I'm not going to get into that, but just looking at what's coming up. We've got the board retreat, we've got that invitation to bid for our accounting services. Kitty's review is, this will be your 11 now or 10? 10. So it's a big 10-year anniversary.
We 10 years
I
ago.
think that is deserving of a round of applause. Well done. So that's a big one. We're looking at getting some technical support for our migration to Microsoft 365 from webmail, which we've been using. There's some public records implications. We want to make sure we're doing this all right, and that we also have the firepower and bandwidth to be able to make this transition successfully. Because otherwise it lands on our backs and we have a lot of other irons in the fire right now. Training classes ongoing. We were contacted by Oregon Telecommunications Association this morning, wanting us to do excavation safety training for them. I also just talked with Rocky about potentially going down to Lane, UCC and doing a presentation there. So there's opportunities like that in addition to the ones that we've scheduled and are posted on our website. You'll hear more today about OAR changes and updating our standards manual and frequently asked questions. Legislative day, as I mentioned, the Capitol is under severe construction constraints, but rethinking that and what we can do to leverage Safe Digging Month in April. Around that same time period, April, May is when the new dirt data comes out, and we talked last year about convening an ad hoc committee on dirt data and what information is available to us and how we want to present it. And so I'll be coming back to the board asking who wants to get involved with that. I know so far Kevin and Lee have expressed interest, and we'll welcome any others who would like to get involved in that effort. And lastly, Kitty will be heading up our delegation to Common Ground Alliance Conference and reporting back. That is coming up in April as well. I think that is all I have to cover for now, so I'll open it up to questions. I did mention in the last scoop, we're seeing an increase in email-based scam, and they're getting more sophisticated and they're taking different angles. The last one we saw was sending a employee manual to Alba for review, and it was from our human resources department, which we are the human resources, we don't have a human resources department. So there's red flags like that. Just watch out before you click or download things. Oftentimes they'll end in a weird extension on the file, .html or something that's out of the ordinary. So that's another red flag. Just be vigilant. That's it.
Who's all going to the CGA?
So far, Jamie, myself, and Lee have been registered.
Okay. You were thinking about going, Rich?
Yeah, but looking at the budget, I'll sit here. I'll stop.
Quick question for the group for next month. If I could get people virtually and here who will be attending at Seaside in person and who will be coming in the night before for our dinner.
I'm planning to be there on the 6th.
Can you guys who were joining us via Zoom say yes or no for me? Okay, great. That helps a lot, thank you.
And actually, since you brought that up, just so you know what to expect, we're hoping to end the board meeting portion of the day early, if possible. So we're going to try and keep the agenda really tight and then get into the retreat part of it by or before lunch, and then get you out of Seaside by, or at the very latest, hopefully earlier, so that you don't end up, because you're probably gonna be traveling back home that night, a lot of you. So we'll make sure we're sensitive to traffic and time.
Are we gonna have enough time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There will be some homework in advance, so we'll send out the strategic plan, but it's written, it's just a matter of fine tuning and then goals. And then we'll have a facilitator there, who some of you have met before.
Okay, so we're gonna go into executive session now. What that means is the board members are the only ones that will be able to attend. Everyone else will need to vacate. Yeah, you can come back if you choose, and we're gonna have lunch too. So just so you know, please stay for lunch. We'll have plenty, right? Okay.
No later than noon.
And so anyone online, please vacate as well.
think we can put them directly into the waiting room.
Yeah, that's what we did last time. We put them in the living room. We're gonna wait.
Access for sharing, for hosting, that would be great. So. I need to read the script. Okay.
Also the owl.
Oh, yeah, please stay in the room. You are a board member. So can you, yeah, the owls did stop. When you,
I wouldn't close any,
does it
Just
go?
like-
All but making you vote.
Yeah.
Tim is the only non-board member still on the call.
Okay,
Neither.
but the owls stopped when you. I don't think you got out.
Are we gonna be able to listen if you turn off the owls?
I'm not turning off. She's just stopping the recording.
We're gonna see what happens here. He's not turning off his computer.
Should be good.
Okay, so Josh, more than likely, I'll
Yeah, no problem.
and we
Stay
can go
close.
over.
I won't leave.
Okay, so I'm reading the script here to start executive session. The OUNC board will now meet in executive session pursuant ORS 192.6602I. To review and evaluate the performance of an officer, employee, or staff member if the person does not request an open meeting. This reason for executive session may not be used to do a general evaluation of an agency goal, objective, or operation, or any directive to personal concerning those objects. ORS 192.6602I. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything said about these subjects during the executive sessions, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in the executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room. There we go. Okay, let me.
One.
All right. Thank you. Oh, we're back in session. Our lunch was a little late, so everyone's finishing up their lunch here. How's everyone online?
You let Frank and get in.
Yeah.
President accounted for.
Okay, perfect. So we're gonna go to the committee reports. Is Jessica, are you back? There you are. Okay, perfect. We're gonna hit you first. I know you have a ton for us.
Actually, hopefully it's gonna be short and sweet. So, I had Kitty send out to the board the working document that we're starting the OAR committee with. The objective was for board members to review what we have on the working document and add anything that needs to be added. I received no feedback, so would be happy to take that verbally now, or if the board would rather provide that feedback individually in emails to me. The next step will be to plan, based upon the amount of work that is sitting on the work log, what frequency the OAR committee needs to meet to be able to dispense of those projects, or if we need to have a planning session just to figure out prioritization. So there was some great information offered by Jamie today that may very well find its way onto this work log as well. So I'll open it up for any questions. Looks like Kyle has a question.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you for putting together this list. I think one of the things that I would like to see is that it is weaved into our strategic plan, and that we do provide as a board, the OAR committee, a list of priorities of what we want to tackle first, or what the scope of each one of those items looks like. I know in the past year, we've kind of been scattered on what we want to try to tackle, but in taking into consideration the workload that Josh has, the workload that the OAR committee continues to take on, prioritization is really going to be a big key to us being able to successfully take that next step and put something out there to open up the regulations, if that's what we want to do, and keep that moving process in an efficient manner. So thank you for thinking of that idea and running with it.
Got it. So Kyle, the point of this document was to calendar what is already in the committee. So at some point prior to even our strategic plan being in existence, these matters will refer to the OER committee. And this is the current status of those items. This putting this work log together was not something I did independently. It was work done by Micah, Kitty, and Josh. And I'm grateful for the help that all of them gave me in putting this together. If the board wants these matters to come back to the board and tie each one of them to strategic pillars, that's great. I just need a direction to go as the chair of the committee. And so I picked up the work that was already in process. Just need some direction.
Okay.
So Melanie, what would you like to do at this point?
Can we put it up? Can we get that up there? I mean, it's
Sure.
gonna be in a chat or a minute, so.
Can you guys see that okay?
Not yet.
I'm gonna zoom in on it just a little bit. Okay, you guys got it okay?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So what we've tried to do was identify the rule or statute that is at issue, specify what the language was that was at issue, the issue that needs to be resolved, and then where we're at between the committee work versus the board work. And eventually this rulemaking status column will give you an indication if we do need to go into rulemaking, what happens there, or if the issue is determined to be something that can be handled through the one call concepts contract or some process refinements. Obviously, this rule or this row would be, this column would be blank, and would just simply, refer to the other two columns to identify what is going on with those issues. So has this been reviewed by the board? I don't know if it makes good sense for us to take our time in this meeting to go through this.
I think anybody that's been part of the board, the briefings from the OERs over time, I mean, that's kind of where we're at now is let's get the board informed of what the committee truly is working on, because the reports in the past have been segmented at best on what we were prioritizing. So not everything was reported on, it was just tabled. So it's just really bringing everything to the forefront of what, we're going to be attacking. And that was really beneficial for Jamie to present that. I think we're going to be able to use that. Another thing that I think, and thank you, Jessica, for getting this a little bit more organized. I know the package I sent to you, this makes it a lot easier for individuals to look at and know, what we're working on. But I think another thing that can help us too is complaints are really going to help drive the OERs. And so that report is essential. So I asked the board, and maybe Kevin, if it's even possible, when complaints are finished, because I know that someone asked about, is there an email that goes out to the complainant when it's finished? If that's something if that email went out to them, if that's something that could be coming to the ED or come to Jessica or the OAR chair, the active OAR chair, so that that could be maybe brought in on an active topic that we're working as something that can help it, or change perspective altogether. So
Is that something that can happen?
No, not current.
Why is that?
We would be first looking at whether the system could provide that information. We don't have a webhook to generate a logic that says, okay, system's been entered. Now you have a service list tied to that. And manage, so that's something I'd have to look into. But it's not a quick and easy solution. I'm not so sure if complaint investigations would be, I mean, they add some light and flavor, but it, you know, I don't know how much weight they'll carry in the OAR perspective. So we've worked to meet your guys' requests on all the information that you guys asked for and put it in a format that is usable. And some enhancements for above and beyond what you guys asked for. So adding functionality would have to be, looked at. I can't give you.
I don't think it's a functionality question.
Well, it's like you're asking an action to result in another action. So
Don't sell it short. I think we got a great group of stakeholders here, and I think the group that's in the OARs is a great group of stakeholders. So whether that information is a complaint that's really not valid, has no weight regarding any of our rules, it'd be good to look at that from a group stakeholder perspective in that committee. So, I mean, that's just my thought on it, and whether it is viable, let the stakeholders figure out if that's going to hold weight or it won't. I think that's all.
We just built this thing. I just, 2 months ago presented to you.
That's an intake form. That's just an intake form. That's a complaint. What I'm saying is that information that we've asked for, it shouldn't be that much of an issue to say, okay, yeah, no, I mean, I know when they're complete, I see, I give the final say on it as the, as the chief of pipeline safety. When you look at these investigations, if I'm wrong, correct me, that's something that's manual. That's something to say, okay, it's done, I can forward that off, and get it to the board, because you are investigating complaints regarding, an OAR, and if it's determined that it's an OAR, then I think it should come here.
Yeah, and we had a system like that you're describing, put in place. And now, we've moved on to more data collection. So we're gonna take a look at it.
I think maybe let me ask the question a little differently, because I hear what Micah is saying, and I think Melanie was echoing. I'm not in the room, so I apologize. I'm trying to look through a little tiny window at people. Kevin, when you get to a final conclusion on an investigation and you issue your final report, could that just simply be forwarded to the board, to Josh, so that it could be disseminated and reviewed as a part of the regular board duties, which would then inform things that we may want to do in the OAR committee? I think that's all we're asking for right now.
Right, and a lot of that part of the case record that we file at the PC, so I have to look into it.
They're all public records, though, are they not?
Yes, they are, but there are certain things that, that we track, that aren't public record, that are public record, part of an open investigation, not open investigation, so.
But those wouldn't appear in your final investigation report that's remitted to the.
Jessica, I'm gonna have to look at the system. I appreciate the question, and slicing it a different way, I'm just gonna look at it. Thank you.
So we have 5 objectives on the OER committee. If anyone else has input, Jessica, you're asking for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, get that information to me so that we can get them on this work list and start prioritizing and planning.
Okay, perfect.
So the last thing that was being prioritized that took precedence was the survey design. So so whatever new direction we have, hopefully we can get that from the board up. The next priority.
Micah?
Yes.
I thought that the survey design was resolved. And I thought that,
So the last email we have is that Kitty emailed Scott and Frank on February 2nd. They're working on a workflow chart that was requested by Kevin during an OAR committee meeting. I'm not sure if that resolves the issue. Which
There's a
is
solution, not a resolution. And so there's a solution to it. And once we found that solution, that process was going to be able, was viable and could be, offered to OCC, then we were going to bring that recommendation to the board if the committee agreed on it.
yeah, that's what I remember, is that we did not have to change the OARs in order to enact the survey design request.
Correct.
So just wanted to throw that one in there. And then one that I think will come up later on in the discussion, but I want the discussion to occur first before we add on here. So I will get you one, Jessica, towards after we have the financial discussion.
great. Thank you.
So, I think Jessica would, what might need to happen next, I mean, we can definitely give you, some resolution on all of those and some thoughts on those, but a lot of them, I think, on those five, they're already discussed. I'm looking at the first one in May 2019, we already discussed this. I thought it's already taken care of. It's the one that with the pre-existing facility enclosure. I think this was coming from Bend, or if I remember exactly, there was a water company or somebody who was trying to clean their valves. And they were coming to the board to discuss if they can be exempt for calling locates, since they're not digging outside their enclosure, they're digging only on inside. And as I'm looking into, we already agree, we already vote, we already give them okay. The only thing that the only thing that remained was to, if we propose a language, and we were waiting, we already proposed the language, we're waiting for the to file a rule change if we need to do that. Was one exception, it never happened since then again. And I think all those issues, you have to take them in the committee, in the committee meeting. So I will suggest, you set up a committee meeting and we can go over all those five. Most of them are already some of them are already resolved. Some of them are in the process of waiting documentation or waiting feedback, like the one with the pre-mark excavation in white, based on Josh packet that he gave us yesterday or day before, and we look at other boards, what they're doing in different states, and they're not, so we can take a determination then, because not all of them are required to mandate white paint, and that was where the committee had a little bit of talking back and forward, how we require this or how we do this, but I think you should set up a committee meeting. And
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I need to figure out what the committee is supposed to be working on before we set a meeting, because right now, this is taking a synthesis of the information that has been transitioned to me as chair. I'm just trying to make sure we got the right stuff on this list. So before we figure out what the next steps are going to be, things that require rulemaking, that's not something the committee is going to do. That's something that Josh is going to need to set up. So we just needed to make sure that everybody on the board was in agreement that this is where we're at on this step.
There were many board members that were not here when resolutions were made to make changes for white paint and link to the ticket. So I implore anyone that's a board member here to look at it, look it over, and if you have any questions or direction, please provide that, because this is just like Jessica said, this is what we're going with if there's no feedback.
Then we'll set up the meetings and make sure that Josh has what he needs, the committee has what it needs, and if there's things that need to be referred back to the board to adjudicate as to whether or not the committee needs to be taking action on it, we'll take that action. But until we make sure we all agree on the workload, I can't move forward. Okay.
I would put a deadline on this.
Yeah,
on
that was
when
gonna be
people-
my next. If I don't hear from you by the end of next week, this is our list.
Yes. Agreed.
Okay. That's all for me.
Jessica. Thanks for taking on the OERs.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Scott's not here, but do we have a report?
I can run through it real quick. You'd asked me to share the slides that I shared with me. I'll do the short version since we're at time.
Ellie?
Unless you want to partake in the evacuation drill.
Well, we just want. Out of here.
Okay, so there's been discussion lately, I think over the last few meetings about how we make the decisions we make on where to spend our money, where the best bang for the buck is on publicity. Do we know if the work we're doing is working? Those type of questions. So all of the, especially this year with the revisiting the budget outlook, we want to make sure that every being strategic about it starts with thinking about what's our overarching goal. We want to reduce damage and improve public safety through increased awareness and changes in behavior. So what do we know? We'll do a new version of this heat map in probably May. But we know the areas of the state where we're seeing a prevalence of damage when you take population out of it. It's like just like the call center, the majority of tickets are in the Tri-County area. You can tell just based on population that more people, more projects, more chances. But 80% of our damages are occurring in just 8 counties. Damage is 80% excavators, 20% homeowners. That's been pretty standard for quite some time. Biggest issues are related to observing clearance, tolerance zones, potholing, non-invasive digging when they know we're good. Shallow digging seems to be increasing lately, making assumptions about digging up to 2 feet down, thinking that you're going to dodge a bullet by just using power equipment to dig 2 feet down and then non-invasive after that, and that's when they get into trouble. Or improper excavation practices and not maintaining marks comes up a lot in the CGA data. 76% of damages are caused by 6 root causes. This is from CGA. No notification made to the call center. Number 1, facility not marked due to locator error. Number 2, excavator failed to maintain clearance after verifying marks, or improper excavation practice not listed elsewhere. Next one is marked inaccurately due to locator error, and 6 is excavator dug prior to verifying marks by potholing. That gives us some of the diagnosis of where some of the problems are coming from. We know with homeowners, the top projects, we have tools and equipment that they use. So when we talk about search-based advertising of like either search retargeting or trying to work with companies like Google, Bing, Yahoo, all the main search engines of predicting the type of projects that a homeowner would do that would get them into trouble if they didn't call or contact 811 first. So this helps a lot with our targeted approach on our messaging and also who we're trying to target, so we're reaching the right people. Tools in our toolbox, as I've said before, you can't do it all with one tool. It'd be nice if we could, but we've got traditional media, trade media, digital media. Digital seems to be a sweet spot for us because we can get a very targeted approach, laser focused, and get good metrics from it so we know who we're reaching. One of the comments in committee was from Scott was saying that's great, but it's also nice to have the tangible, billboard, bus board, things like that. You can actually see and understand, because some of these things, and I agree, you have to take the metrics with a grain of salt because they're always trying to make it look a lot better than it is. And so we try to, I'll show you the matrix in a minute where we try and take that out of the equation. Because, for example, if Harbortized has 3 million cars. And that's an impressive number, but how many of those 3 million actually change behavior? Seeing a car driving by, how many of them did they actually take in that message and act on it, or, you know, do something that they wouldn't have otherwise done? The events and experiences, we've been doing a lot of rodeos, baseball games, events and stuff like that, sponsorships. Then there's direct communications through newsletters, emails, things like that. We haven't done a lot with point of sale. That's messages at the gas pumps, grocery stores, convenience stores, home improvement stores, rental stores. I think getting on the rental company websites would be probably my top pick out of all those. Education and training, classes, online modules, videos, grade schools. It's not traditionally known, thought of as publicity, but it's an important tool along with all these others. So this is the matrix that I've asked the committee to work from. This is just an example. These are not the actual ratings, but the idea is to try and weight based on these criteria, all the different opportunities that we have, knowing that we can't spend, you know, we have more opportunities than we have money to do for. They're trying to score it so that we can prioritize those, and especially with some of the cuts that we'll talk about a little bit here. We've taken a step back from this to figure out what we have to spend before we start talking about what we're going to spend it on. So it just makes sense. In the strategic plan, there's a page on this as well, and I'll be building that out as well. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that and provide any feedback you have. And then we've got all kinds of different considerations for 2023 and beyond that we'll talk about as a committee. And if any of you are interested in sitting in or joining the conversation, we welcome it. But that is the long and the short of it without getting into the hour-and-a-half long version of it.
So what CGA had and what Kevin presented us with, is it about the same? I mean, or
As far as
root causes, as far as who is, it's all about the same.
yeah, I mean, some of it we don't even have available for Oregon, so we have to rely on national statistics and information is the best we have. But from what we do have here, from the DIRT report, it's pretty consistent, and it doesn't change a lot from year to year either.
Right.
The other thing that's noted about the gas data, which is, it tends to be of a higher quality data because there's so many requirements for the integrity management plans, and so it even pointed out that the gas data represents an overall respective trend for what's going on as far as issues to improve problems.
Cool. Okay.
So Josh, all those data that you present us, where the data come from? Is that DIRT or?
DIRT, which is through CGA, and then some of the CGA reports they put out. They have some new stuff there within the last month that I haven't even gotten into yet.
Something like that?
Sorry.
Something like DIRT? You're talking about what others?
The new, they do separate reports from the DIRT data. That's just a database they pull, you know, and it's, like I say, the accuracy of it is based on the utilities that are religious about putting the damage information into the system, which not everybody does. So,
Yeah. Oh,
but then they do separate studies and research that they have on a page that is available to everyone and all members and board members.
do we have all the major utility in Oregon, putting data in there?
No. So in telecommunications, I've heard there's some that are not putting them in regularly. And then it came up in Southern Oregon too, where they said they believe they're a hot spot because they're better about reporting damage.
Got it. So the telecom industry isn't
That's
participating
more
as much.
That's more qualitative than quantitative. I don't have numbers to back that up. It's just from conversations that I've had.
Maybe that's something we should look, I don't know. Look into and advise them to, because we cannot be better if we don't have the numbers.
Yeah.
Exactly, so maybe, I don't know, there's not a mandatory to do that, but maybe we can reach out to them to same thing with positive response. Just to see if they are able to bring the data in.
Yeah, I think from what I saw, I said earlier, I think it was a 68% data certainty. With the statistic I saw, that tells you that we're quite a ways off from perfection.
Yeah, oh yeah, and then we don't even want to go there, who does the report, that who's putting it in.
Yeah,
And that's one of the issues that, you know, it's the company that puts the report in is the company that actually does the survey, that actually the company, so it's kind of hard to kind of blame on themselves on doing that. So how accurate is that? Because there's, I don't even remember how many questions in that third report, when you have to file a report, there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
On the root cause and this and this and that, and there's so many avenues that you can go around on that, so the accuracy of that report.
Yeah, when Lindsay was helping me with it, she said, her comment was, it's imperfect, but it's the best we have.
Yeah.
Okay. We gotta base our decisions on something, and unless we have something better, and that's why kind of my dream of that ad hoc committee on data and the dirt data that we bring up in April, May, would be not just talking about the dirt report, but what else is available out there that we get feel better about basing our strategy on.
Yeah, because we all get reports on damages. When I'm getting my reports on damages from my locator, their numbers are very low. When I get them from my excavators, their numbers are low. When I look in dirt, then I'm like, something is wrong here.
Yeah.
There is no, you know, and I'm fortunate because I have a company that does all the reports that it's a bit, doesn't have nothing to do with me. They're on their own. But
Yeah, if you go on the dashboard today, our numbers on our dashboard are completely different than what Lindsay and I worked out. Because they were using Oregon stats, and there's also a whole embedded portion of it that's Alabama. And nobody can understand why there's Alabama statistics within Oregon's report. But their dashboard then pulls that data, so it artificially inflates or deflates numbers based on that. It's not even from Oregon. So it's
so based on the report that you presented, with the data that we have available, so let's say the data is good. That's what we have. It looks like about 20% they're failing to call 811 or like 811 or whatever the message is.
yeah, it's still a large factor.
Off of the,
But then the question is, did they not call because they weren't aware, or did they know they should have and they were in a hurry, or don't believe in the system, or, you know,
It's cheaper for them.
cheaper? Yeah, it's cost of doing business to operate that way.
Fortunately.
If you're a smaller operation.
I still. So the rest of the 7, all, because, you know, the whole number could show up, it's off of the 75%, it's not off of the whole. Assuming, so the rest of the 75% off of the 100% of the 76, that's pretty much all about locate an excavator. So when we look at us as the board, and when we send the message out and we look at the budget, how much did we spend on publicity to promote you have to call 811, and how much did we spend on trying to help the locators or the excavators, which they have the majority of the damage. So maybe there will be something for us to look into for future. Maybe we can rearrange some of the funds to go. Now, looking at our mission, definitely doesn't say that we have to train locators, we have to train excavator. We definitely have to promote publicity, promote safety. So that's where, you know, we gotta kind of go around, but it does say something if 75% are all damages done by excavators and let's say locators mistake or whatever you want to call it over there, not pointing fingers or something like that. So most of those, they do have a report that comes out, and most of those, they do have some claims. The money that it needs to be nowhere or another taken care of. And I'm just surprised when I see those kind of numbers, you know, we don't get anything. Do they file at the 811 not calling in? Is this their first time? Is this the second time, third time? The third doesn't give you that kind of report.
No.
So we're kind of talking.
What do you suggest? What do you suggest?
I don't know, I'm hoping that, that somehow we'll get some report that will tell us who violates this law, the 811. And that way we can figure out what to do next, how to move money left and right, and based on your last email that you sent me, it looks like in Washington, most of their trainings are done due to their penalty fees that they receive.
Yeah.
And that's something that I will love to do more training if we have more money. But at this point, we kind of stretch to the budget, and there's not enough for us to explore more trainings into that area to help locators, or even so, it's not the mission of the board, but it does somehow, we do help them.
Yeah, and
If there is
realistically, the training does have a much higher chance of moving the needle on damage prevention than, that traditional messaging, and generic publicity efforts. Is even if we go targeted, you're gonna have a much better chance of affecting change through the interaction and in a training setting. You just won't reach as many. And so it's tricky. And that's the other part too, is like, we know that 80% of the damage is happening in those 8 counties. So do we focus on the population basis and play the numbers game of just going to where the people are, or do we try and get into some of those smaller communities where that heat map shows, where you're not going to reach many people, but you might be able to reduce damages significantly in that one little county.
Yeah, I like the fact that Washington, they have that process in place that they can use their penalty fees. And I'm surprised they actually use Staking University for their training, which I'll give you some feedback. Their prices are way higher than what we pay. You're talking about $800 per person per training for 2 days.
Yeah, they're offering it for free to their.
And they're able to offer for free. That's kind of make me think about how much money do they get from penalties if they were able to offer those classes for free. So, I don't know, that's something else that we can look at.
Definitely. Thank you. All right, budget audit tariff committee. We have a few things to bring to the board. And if Josh is ready.
Almost.
And amend the 2023 budget that we had proposed earlier.
Okay, so this one is a little bit more involved. Everyone should have received the issue summary. I brought hard copies. It was also in the board packet, and I sent it to all committee members. And then we had a conversation about it this morning. So I'll just run through it real quick. Unlike the old Ronco commercials with the chicken rotisserie where you set it and forget it, we projected a budget that we cannot set and forget. I compared it to this dart metaphor here, where we started out from a very long distance away from the dartboard with blurry glasses. So we're trying to hit a target that we don't have perfect conditions for. Now at this point, we have better clarity. We have more time to base our decision on. And so I've done a deep dive on what we know to try and project out what we're gonna have to work with this year. Unfortunately, I wish I was coming to you saying, we got to figure out where we're gonna spend all this extra money that we came up with, but it's the exact opposite. It's lower than we projected. And that is because 99% of our revenue comes from call center operating receipts. So we can talk about fee or fine revenue, we can talk about interest revenue. It's not even 1% of our overall revenue. It comes down to the call center operating receipts. So we pay based on inbound tickets and we get paid based on outbound tickets. So keep that in mind as we go through this. I gave 3 different projections based on a 3-year average, a 5-year average, and a year-over-year decline. Because of the economic headwinds that we're facing, and it should come as no surprise if you've been following the news lately, there's stories daily of layoffs, deferred projects, deferred investments. There's a general consensus in Oregon that we're headed for a mild recession. Not a guarantee, but we are headed that direction. And it does look like it's not going to be like a 2008, 2009 type recession, but it's going to be something that we need to keep in mind because it could impact our tickets, which then impacts our revenue. So on the inbound side, there's a decline. And if we look at outbound, I'm proposing that we go with the year-over-year decline. The 5-year average suggests an uptick this year, but we can't bank on that. So with that decline, we pay, I think Scott presented earlier, our blended ticket price is about $502. What we get paid on the other side now with the service tariff increase is $1.40 per ticket. And that excludes, of course, exemptions as set forth in the Oregon Revised Statutes. I forget what chapter it is, but y'all know it by now. So $1.40 a ticket. So as we see outbound tickets decline, that means for every one of those tickets we don't get, we're not getting $1.40. The in-out ratio continues to plummet. We've talked about that. We don't have a perfect explanation for why that's happening, but it is relevant because the lower that ratio gets, the closer we get to a break-even point on how much we're bringing in versus how much we have to pay. And that's contractually obligated. Keep in mind, under our contract with the OCC, we have an escalation in there annually for up to 2.75% in our costs that is based on the CPI. And so with inflation, it's likely will be a 2.75% increase for the foreseeable future. Call center financials, I really focused on this rather than the overall, since, like I say, the majority of our funds come from receipts. So there's not a huge trend here. It's just you can tell that our gross is leveling off and it's very flat. And then the net revenue is actually declined in recent years. So this was also the impetus for our decision to increase the service tariff rate. We proposed, or I had proposed back in December, based on incomplete information. If you look through that first page of the analysis, the background was we didn't have financials for October or November when we're projecting. So we didn't even know where we're going to be at the end of 2022, let alone what we have in 2023. We also didn't have the service tariff yet because it was being backfilled, so we didn't have a good sense of that as well. So based on that low projection of outbound tickets, I'm suggesting that we reduce our revenue to $2,490,000 and change, which gives us a difference of what we have previously approved in December to now of $127,000. The items below that are just some areas that I was just spitballing going through the budget. There's not a lot we can cut because we're already cut to the bone. We're pretty lean. So these are areas that we could pull from to get to that $127,000 shortfall. So what we're asking for today, and actually let me go back. Kyle brought up a good point this morning too. We have obligated ourselves to maintain a 3-month operating revenue reserve. And right now we're, I think, around $400,000. I need to go back and put numbers. To be a true 3-month operating reserve, we need to be closer to $600,000. So we're short in our reserves as well. If we're only funding the call center and keeping that contract, we need about $470,000 in reserves. So we get a lot closer based on that. What I'm looking for today, which we approved in committee, was to ask the board to revise our 2023 budget with this reduction in forecast revenue. Two, to identify the specific cuts to balance the budget or empower me to go ahead and put that into a budget, and then we can finesse that. And three, asking the board, do we want to initiate a spending freeze or spending controls until we have more certainty, so we can revisit this at a time to be determined. On deck, Kevin brought up a good point this morning, that part of our issue may be with the accuracy of mapping, map information that utilities are providing. And then also we've talked a lot about the short and long-term approach to exemptions. One is assuring that those who are receiving the exemptions actually qualify for those exemptions currently. And then two is, should we take legislative action to eliminate some or all of those exemptions? But that's a 2025 plan. So I know that's a lot. Open to questions, and I mentioned this morning, whatever we decide, once we get this in place, I also don't want to give the feeling that the sky is falling and that we're falling apart. This is just an adjustment that's necessary to reach a zero-based budget. And I also don't want to become penny wise and pound foolish, where we start getting worried about every little $100 expenditure or this or that, that we're going to hamstring ourselves and not actually be able to carry out our plan of work. We get too focused on the small amounts and not the big picture. So
Can you explain to me the difference between a spending freeze and
freeze would be, we're not spending anything until we know we have certainty that we have enough to, you know, where we just hold off on everything. Whereas controls, maybe we allocate a certain amount or say, you know, up until this point, we can spend, you know, putting specific parameters around it rather than just saying we're not spending anything.
I'm just curious on the board meetings then. So what, if we said spending freeze right now and we all agreed on it, what would we do for next month? Would everything be canceled?
So we can't do that because we've already committed. There's certain things we've already committed to that we could not, and we take a lot. So like, for example, if we didn't use the seaside facilities, we'd still have to pay for it. So it wouldn't make sense, but.
So what do we have that we have already accounted for? So like Seaside, we've already put a deposit down, right? And maybe possibly paid for it, I'm not too sure. How about, what other things?
Common Ground Alliance conference, we've already made some expenses for that. We've held off on the publicity committee. We have a couple of contracts that are teed up and ready to go, but we've held off on signing those until we know what we have to work with, so we're not locking ourselves into something that we don't. I'd have to, we can go through the budget.
And sponsorships, whether than anything in publicity really. We
Yeah.
put a few invoices for board clothing, but not ordering anything.
Okay, we're pretty well stocked up, right? No? Yes.
All good, all good.
Kyle has his hand up and then.
Yeah, I was just gonna go along with what you were commenting, Melanie, is that in the spirit of controls is if we have budgeted $100,000, for example, for advertising, that we only spend up to 50% on until we get to a specific time or we've seen enough of the revenue come in. One of the things Josh didn't talk about is that is in the report is that we're not seeing the tariff numbers, a complete picture of the increase with the tariff numbers, right? So those tariffs that were increased in August are getting billed right now from the back billing because of how the system is set up and the number of days that member utilities have to pay those. So we're gonna start seeing that trickle back in, and we'll see more complete picture towards the middle of the year. And so the spending controls that we could implement are just when do we spend the money that we have budgeted? And so making sure that we have the money basically in the bank before we spend it, instead of spending it and then waiting for the money to come in, so to speak. Those are just a couple ideas that I had talked with Josh about. Does that make sense?
Recommendation at all from the committee?
Yeah, the recommendation was to approve the revised budget with that reduction in forecasted revenue and the other things. Questions that would go on.
Without having, you know more than anyone else, Josh, so I think that would be a good idea, is for you to kind of take it back. Put some cost savings to it, or give us our best option to keep operating, as we are, but maybe give us some better options. Whether that goes back to the committee and then the recommendation is made from there, but we can talk in circles here.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to go, because we can talk right now, well, I can cut this much money from this training, or let's cut that much money from publicity, or let's not do, publicity with radio, or let's not do this. They're just, have to come with how much we need to cut, and we'll do that.
So how about this discussion of those items on the bottom there? Is there anything that stands out of we should not cut that, or any input on those areas? I have my own personal take on a few of those.
I think if you look at like dormers, correct? We what we spend over there, we're spending $100K every year. So maybe we can freeze a little bit. I'd say to close the whole thing, like maybe it's time for us. I don't know. I don't want to even attack the T-shirt program, because that's a great program for publicity to go out, but there are revenues over there, and we can kind of stop that. I mean, I cannot believe that we should not be able to stop some of the definitely we can cut some of that. But I think that should be
budgeted more. We increased it to 125,000 for this year because costs were going up so significantly. Like hats are $10, more than $10.
maybe it's time to say stop. Maybe it's time to just freeze for a year and no more happening to wear. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Times clearly ask us to look into this. And put not a completely freeze, but some of them we can freeze them out for a while. Especially what's the most costing, what's the most money that goes out.
We have a minimum with dormers that we
For contract. It's something specified.
So we can take the hats off, and we can take the higher
heavier items.
heavier items,
Shipping.
and
That
just
everybody wants.
that everybody wants them, of course.
I'm waiting for you. I mean, we have to.
But we can talk about it. Maybe we can look into who's ordering and what's ordering
Yeah.
and
Katie
when,
does that.
and
Katie-
and why. And then I know she always cuts a lot of people.
So I personally think you guys are the best to understand and know where our money needs to be cut, if it needs to be cut. And obviously controlled, because we're already controlled. To a point, so, I would say. From the committee, we go with the revised. Revised budget forecast, and you cut where you need to cut, and we will approve it. If it's what? 10%?
Yeah, 10% or more. Required for approval.
Right, but I would wait.
Okay.
Till the end of the year. for that.
Got it.
That's my whole thing on it.
We can work with that.
I don't know, I'm hoping, because I envision this board how it works in the long run. I envision this board is not gonna budget looking at what's come in, I'm hoping at one point, we're gonna have enough money in the bank that we can say, this is how much we made, we're gonna spend this money, and not budget, plan on what we think the ticket's gonna come in. So that way, we have to reverse. We have to have money in the bank and make the budget yearly for what we have in the bank designed for that year. And whatever you coming next year, the next year, all the revenue that comes in, then goes in a different account, and then, so reverse this. I think we're doing it wrong by trying to get the budget, planning how many locates we had last year, and hoping we have.
We have to budget some way.
Yeah.
That's the only way to budget.
Yeah, but I'm hoping in time, we're gonna have that reverse. Because that's
Yes,
kind
it's a-
of
it's
the
a
way to
process,
go.
that's for sure. So Frank has a question for everyone. Can any of the board members give feedback on what their individual companies are forecasting for projects? And what variables are impacting their ability to do work?
Underground work.
Under.
Well, we've already banked a year, so.
Say that again?
So we've already banked a year, so we're looking at. No. From the private side, yeah, of course, that's the way this week works.
Can be.
2024.
Our projects keep rolling in.
It's not stopping, is it?
No problem at all. We're still turning some work away. Projects anywhere from 2 million up to over $13 million jobs are lying on the table. The biggest slowdown and the biggest impediment to us are permitting and employees,
What are you thinking?
followed up by material.
Yeah.
Piping and supplies are horrible. They still are. What's plentiful today, give it 2 weeks and it's non-existent for another 2 months. So having the cash revenues or the reserves to buy when things are available, then you're stuck in a warehouse holding on to them for 3 months or 3 years. It's really a new way of looking at things to where it never used to be that way, because we could simply go to the suppliers. Even on special orders, it might be 60 days out, which was plenty of lead time to build your projects around. Today, truthfully, Monday mornings always start off with how many employees are we today, or crews are short. The second one is where's the equipment at? And 3, do we have the personnel to move and mold the equipment to where the work is today? And so you're becoming a lot leaner, could I say, than what we used to. And all the fluff you used to build in on projects and that has really changed to be more of a strategic kind of hit with smaller crews, smaller equipment, and the ability to move them during the day, move them from one job to another to fulfill the need. And it really has changed. But as far as Frank, if your question is as far as work, the work is out there and the work continues to come in. Owners are not hoarding the money like they did in 08 and 09 and 10 to write it out and see what happens in that. The investments are still out there. It's trying to get the resources to work at a performance level that we used to work at. And it's just that constant, as we all know, and we listen to each other in this room, we're all dealing with the employee issue, and on the supply issue, when that's half your business is having the equipment and the supplies to put in the ground. But as far as volumes and as far as projects, no, they're still out there. They're still bidding on them every week.
I mean, you guys are driving out, you get all the construction around Portland from all over the place. We're busy.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to,
I think the motion to approve the budget 2023. And with the reduction. in Forecast revenue. The caveat for cost savings and budget cuts recommended by Josh.
core committee.
I'll second it.
Any more discussion? Hearing none. All approved, please say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Those are the same. Okay, motion passes. So also with that on deck, investigating the accuracies of maps. So Mr. Kevin brought that up.
Yes.
Are you willing to chair an ad hoc committee and work with Scott on the accuracies of mapping?
Sure.
Okay. Would anyone, so would you, can you explain a little bit more about what you would like to,
Yeah.
what you would like to do in this committee? So you brought this up in the budget and audit committee meeting.
Yeah, so looking at the in and out ratio and we see cuts, but we're also seeing, you know, if there could be revenues, one ticket going out, you only get so many outbound tickets going out. One of the things that in looking at the notification boundaries that concept houses in order to actually function are the members updating their maps appropriately to cover all of their underground facilities. And so would it be worthwhile to investigate you know, if that's an issue that needs to be addressed somehow. And really recommendation is, you know, find the scope of, you know, how to pick certain members to look at. The other part is to assess how we're going to address it as a board, bringing it to the members' attention. And that was just it.
Two. So it would be mapping accuracy, and you would head it. I also have a hand up. No, okay. Is there anyone else that would like to be a part of the committee? Josh, Kitty. Andy. Did you get that? Let's call it map accuracy.
I would like to frame it as how one call concepts is used in the term is notification boundary.
I'll participate, Melanie.
Okay, Sean.
You can add me as well.
Perfect.
You can put me in here too.
Oh, my God.
Well, it's the way that you look at this committee and what you're looking into. I'm curious to see how this committee is gonna look into this accuracy of.
I'll be part of it.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Did you get all of those members? Okay. Did you get the name of the committee? Notification boundary. Are you part of it? Yep, I have to be, don't I?
Go on vacation.
I'll just be bird on the wall, fly on the wall, fly on the wall.
I'll be the boy.
Okay, so you're taken care of. Are we done with the budget and audit? Is that what you needed?
Yes, thank you.
Although, do you have anything else in the things to add? Lee? Lee?
I was just gonna say I'd like to participate in the mapping group as well, please.
training and education. Mitch, do you have anything to report?
Nothing to report, just reminder, next week, we're gonna have a locator class. In Seaside, it's gonna be on the 7th, and I believe we're gonna cancel the one on the 8th, we don't have enough participants. But we're gonna bring Bob to the board meeting, just to say hi. It's been for people to see who's Bob. I don't know if everybody saw him, but and then we're looking into see the futures when we select those kind of classes, maybe we now with this kind of budget, maybe we can select them on some facility there. Let's say not free of charge. Maybe not expensive.
Well, we already put some, we upped it to $75. Yep.
And I don't know if that's the reason why we don't have audience for next class. We have only 7 people. Since we have paid to $75. But I think the result is due to the fact that it's the location. As we talk, I think it's the location that actually. Have a, we usually.
Back in the day, people that just aren't paying. Yeah. I mean, back in the day when we opened up registration, within 2, maybe 3 days, the class is full.
We had to
Wherever
close the
we were,
registration.
we was paid. And we were up in Ontario with classes. But everything after.
But companies were paying to do that. Companies would say, hey, yeah, go to your training, do that. Now it's hard just to say, hey, can I go overnight here?
Nothing to report unless you guys have anything. Any ideas or anything? I'm here to listen and follow the board direction.
Okay. Jessica had to leave and she has nothing to report for policy and procedures. So going into OUCC, Kyle, do you have anything?
I'll be short. We have our next meeting in March on Tuesday before our big meeting at Seaside. So please come attend if you were there early. We did elections at the end of the year and working on a small budget. Other than that, I think everybody is getting started up on some of the councils. So that'll be a big focus for the year. So end of the report. Unless Scott or it's I believe it's at 12:30, right, Kitty?
Lunch at noon, right?
Lunch at noon, 12:30.
Tuesday? Over.
On the 7th,
Yeah, on the 6th, right?
no, 7th.
7th, that's what I meant.
That's what we
National
heard.
news.
We have 2 things. One of them is the CoreX training provided by Paradigm. They come through here annually and it's intended for emergency response. And it's free to us, includes lunch. And we'll put it out to the board if you're interested in attending. I think it was in
The board.
it's in the board packet.
The 57 pages.
57 pages, you're right.
It's the last page.
CoreX through
That is
Paradigm.
right here.
I do, but it-
Yeah. What are you thinking me so?
The whole thing.
Night, right?
But yeah, they do trainings in Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. Or there's 2 in Oregon.
The last page, that's gonna be here, we're sort of response.
No, it's not. The location.
That's my understanding. I think there's, it's federally mandated, I believe.
And CGA, we have already kind of discussed, but they're Jamie, Kitty, and Lee. Right? Yes. Are going, okay,
And Kevin was talking about. You had said.
but you're paying for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
So I say we go.
That's registration. No more.
I pass that. to-
I'm gonna take it off. for it. But yeah, I think it should be. Do we have any old business? Here we go. Business? Oh. Any new business? Okay, good with the order. Oh, Mike, I get to take a picture with you, or maybe Josh will.
I think
We all should, or maybe all of us should.
so it should be, I think, you want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so, we have, various, if you read the last, we have various, recognition programs for our board. And one that I want to make sure we recognize is when members serve on the executive committee, because it's an additional responsibility, a lot of hours and time spent that you never see, behind the scenes. And so two members who have recently ended their terms on the executive committee, but are not leaving our board. And so I want to make sure that you're not allowed to leave, like them off, then you can't leave the family, are Micah Brown and Paul Schmidt. Thank you for your service. As secretary and as chair, so we'll present you both with your certificate of appreciation. Thank you.
Now, or?
Yep.
So since the executive, they make once every 3 months, but the
Not take the place of your class.
Here we go, look at her.
Hi, Candy, I'll be signing on.
Don't let it go to your head.
Must be nice to get a big plaque like that.
Don't worry, it's got off y'all.
Can I take a picture?
It's your name up on the board right there. That would be your nice big plaque. All right, so do we have anything else for good of the order? No, okay, so the next meeting we have spoke about, it's in Seaside, it's on the 8th. Starts at 9 o'clock, where it's gonna be super quick, we're gonna get hopefully through it before lunch,
Yes.
so, okay, and then after that, we have the retreat, it should be over around 4-ish.
That's, yeah, no later than 4, get people on the road.
that's late.
Well, I'm staying that night, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm fucking 2 nights, I don't care. So, please make it, it would be wonderful. Yes.
Is the OUCC
Yes,
on Wednesday?
the 7th Tuesday,
Tuesday, and we're there on Wednesday.
yes.
Dinner on Tuesday.
Dinner on Tuesday evening, so if you can make it to the OUCC meeting, it is at 12:30, lunch is at noon. Go to the OUCC meeting, we
Is
have
that it?
dinner. Yep, we have dinner and then our meeting at 9 o'clock. Okay, the retreat after. I think that's it, I think that's all the announcements. All right.
Move to adjourn.
Second. Okay. What time is it?
There's- there are those-
Okay.